The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised.
Oh man, there's got to be something to listen to on this dial.
This message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere. It is speculated that these objects are of extraterrestrial origin. The broadcast will quiet at this time for your safety.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays, as we light the void with Joe Root on Spaced Out Radio. You can follow Joe on Twitter at Lighting the Void, on Facebook at Lighting the Void, and you can call into tonight's show at 501-777-5631. You can also follow Joe at spacedoutradio.com.
We're sorry. Your call cannot be completed as done.
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Why don't you talk into the microphone? I got a backup mic right here. Check 1, 2. Testing, testing. Yeah, they both working, and guess what? They don't like no feedback. What's up?
Now, let's fire the show up and light the void on Spaced Out Saturdays with your host, Joe Root.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Saturday. I am your humble host, Joe Root, and it's good to have you with us. It's great to be here on this lovely, cold Saturday, February the 17th on into the 18th. Thank you all for joining us, wherever you're listening from, across the web or across the world on any of our affiliates. It's an honor to have you here, guys. Let's welcome in everyone listening on our affiliates, WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans in over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, and we rock out every night with Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. Also, you can check us out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio show, and you can follow me on Twitter at Lighting the Void as well. You can subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio, and listen to us on iHeart and the USA. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our show from iTunes, and of course the website spacedoutradio.com. And if you go to patreon.com for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of Spaced Out Radio. Now, if you want to take part in the show, sign into one of our chat rooms on Spreaker or on the UPRN chat room or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club, or if you're on Twitter, just go to hashtag Spaced Out Radio and I'll get to your questions in there as well. The call-in number when the phone lines open up is 501-777-5631, 501-777-5631. And if you head over to our website for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. And as of right now, you can go to the Spaced Out Radio store and pick up a T-shirt, poster, or an SOR sticker. Now, we also have the Encounter online that deals with everything paranormal. You can check out the latest blog there as well. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. And Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV also has some great video viewing there as well. Don't forget to go to our GoFundMe page to help upgrade the studios, gofundme.com/We Own the Night. Now tonight, we continue our journey down the rabbit hole of ufology with what I believe, and I hope you will too by the time the show is over, is one of the greatest UFO stories never told. Now, if you're into ufology, and I'm sure you've heard the name George Van Tassel, or if you've heard about the Integratron, well, we have George's nephew with us again, Chad C. Meek. Chad Meek is the writer, director, and executive producer of Giant Rock the movie. He has taken his own early childhood UFO abduction experiences and time spent with his eclectic uncle George Van Tassel to bring the first of 3 episodes about the people who gathered at a place called Giant Rock, located in California's Mohave Desert. Now, Chad has over 30 years of experience in the natural resource industries to the Giant Rock the movie franchise that he's trying to get going. Now, some of Mr. Meek's accomplishments during the last 25 years as president and CEO of Clarity Resources, Inc., including drilling 6 oil wells in Nevada's Great Basin, under budget, which has never been duplicated, by the way. This project's success led him to 2 oil well discoveries and the acquisition of over 100,000 acres of mining claims in Alaska, Nevada, and Bosnia. So that's pretty impressive. Now, the Giant Rock the movie fuses together elements of sci-fi, adventure, government conspiracy, and actual historical events. Now, this film takes some creative liberties, and historical sources and the spirit of George's legacy remain constant throughout. Now, we got to reflect on this film about the compelling life of George Van Tassel as not only an important part of our history, but also as a very contemporary public message, which has transcended the decades and has been continuously denied by all the world's governments. That aliens exist. Well, maybe up until now, but they have made contact. You can check it out. GiantRockTheMovie.com. His Facebook page, Facebook.com/GiantRockTheMovie. I think Chad might be out of country or something, but he's with us. Chad, thanks for coming on Spaced Out Saturday. It's good to talk to you again, brother.
Hey, good to talk to you, Joe. Absolutely my pleasure.
Now, are you in the States right now, or are you somewhere else?
No, I'm in the States right now. I'm actually up in Pismo Beach. I've been up here for a few months. We're having a house built for us up down in Mexico, and so we're just kind of in transition. So anyways, well, I'm up here in Pismo and just laying low and looking up at the stars.
Right on, brother. Man, that's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've talked to a lot of people about this on the Fringe FM. We carry that Giant Rock the movie flag proudly. Because I still think to this day, Chad, that this is one of the stories that, with all these events and conferences and stuff going on, there's other people trying to tell the story, but there's no better person to hear the story from than the nephew of this man, you.
Well, it's funny. I have, definitely have the legacy in mind as far as of the whole event, not only of my uncle, but just the whole people that were out there, and the whole story is one that's extraordinary and intriguing, and I'm a first person witness. So consequently, there are a lot of I guess there's a lot of invitations out there, but the bottom line is that I not only do I own the copyright on the whole material and which is registered with the Library of Congress. It's my story, and I definitely know that there is nobody, and I've been fighting with Hollywood over this, there's nobody that should be telling the story other than me. Otherwise it'll get diluted, watered down, confused, et cetera, and this is a very confusing material anyways, just to start with. I mean, hell, we're dealing with aliens, time travel, government intrigue, et cetera, and so I think it'd be better to actually have it here from the horse's mouth versus some other people are just going on the internet and gathering whatever information they can. They don't know. I know.
Right. And I wanted to ask you about this too, because in all honesty, I haven't talked to you in a while, brother, and I've missed you, to be honest with you. You were around when I first started doing this thing, this gig of radio or whatever. You're one of the first people I talked to, and way before then, there was so much doubt and so much interference from the skeptics and naysayers. Now that the government has come out, and I haven't even got to talk to you about this, man. Now that the government has come out, admitted to investigating these things, in whatever way they're doing it. Do you think that changes the game for the George Van Tassel story at all?
No, it actually just what it does, it adds credibility. I mean, first of all, we're all originally all labeled a bunch of kooks out at and desert rats out in Landers, California. As far as with some of the stuff here, but as time goes on, and the many people I've talked to that have actually had experiences out there, and or whether they be connected with my uncle or not, independently, which is even better. There's actually been some great stories emanate out there with just at the place Giant Rock. It's such a strong and cosmic conductor of all things UFO. It's amazing in many respects. So yeah. At any rate, as I've been going along here, I gathered more and more information. People have come to me, through the internet. They've heard me speak on not only your show but other shows also, and it's been a real intriguing and interesting educational thing for me also. Because had I not been out here, I would not have heard about the other multitude of stories about Giant Rock.
Right on. Now, I want to tell anybody that I'm sure that we've got people that haven't heard the story. I don't know what that noise is, Chad. You got a fan on or something back there?
I don't have anything on. Nothing. There's no.
Could be the aliens among us then. Huh?
The aliens among us. I hear like kind of a glow, a little bit of a, but it's not bad. It's just very subtle. So yeah, I don't know.
It's all right. But just for anybody that hasn't heard this story, though, give us a rundown about what happened to George. You can shorten it down, but I know there's some people in here. In fact, I know for sure that have never heard this story. Believe it or not.
Well, really, the story began. This is one thing, and I keep emphasizing this. The story actually became started with a man named Frank Kreitzer, and he's kind of been lost in the shuffle. And I've made it really important that he gets in not only the book but in the screenplay, and we'll get in the movie because he's an intricate part of this whole thing. Because it was originally his vision about the giant stone that he actually had shared with my uncle at his gas station circa 1930 during the Depression, and that's what prompted the whole thing. Frank Kreitzer was a merchant marine, and he had basically landed in my uncle's gas station with a broken down Exeter, which is a car, and so consequently. And he was a deeply metaphysical man himself, and he literally was a follower of Nikola Tesla. And we're talking about 1930s. We're talking about long time ago, and Dr. Rudolf Steiner. And so he had a very unique perception of the whole world. And of course, this is probably a remnant of a lot of the early Theosophy group. Annie Besant. Madame Blavatsky, all these people, Krista Murda, all this. Anyways, he was in the thick of stuff. And along with it, he had this vision to go out in the middle of the desert and seek treasure, mining treasure. And he landed in my uncle's gas station. And my Uncle George and his uncle essentially backed him in his early efforts based on this vision, this very powerful vision. And this is something that hasn't been in the various stories that I've heard. No one has ever gotten to this as far as the real origins. So from top to bottom, I have the story all the way to my uncle's, untimely death, which is a whole different thing. But anyways, to getting back to the whole thing, took about a few years, and Frank Kreitzer was out there. He built a structure inside of a rock, a 10.5 story boulder, and scratching out a living. And he did a lot of blasting, a lot of mining, prospecting, and things like that. At the same time, he was channeling extraterrestrials himself out at this giant rock, and which is in a sense a cornerstone of not only our space, early space interests. It was just like a gathering point of a lot of different people. Well, anyways, to try to get to the whole thrust of the whole story here, my uncle had Frank Kreitzer died. He had actually had an unfortunate death. He was eviscerated down the inside of the rock by authorities who thought he was a German spy. And there's some other side of the whole thing where they claimed that he had stole some dynamite, but bottom line is he wouldn't come out of the inside of the rock. So what'd they do? They threw smoke bombs down there and ignited the whole thing and eviscerated the man. And lo and behold, my uncle kept on, it's a family spot, almost a family retreat almost. He had been going out there for 11 years with the rest of my family. And eventually he had my uncle had his own vision about this stuff in about 47 and went out there and actually started living right after Roswell. So bottom line is that there's a whole legacy in early Americana that includes the who's who of aviation and space travel, and including Jack Parsons is one, Howard Hughes. There's a whole cavalcade of people that came out there and literally explored the various possibilities of not only space exploration, rocketry, and metaphysics. And they were actually one of the first places to combine all this stuff. So that's where it was happening. And it's literally the cornerstone of everything we've got right now, of all of ufology. Now, where my uncle learned to channel aliens, he learned it from Frank Kreitzer, and he continued that. And so he actually had channeling sessions going on out there pretty regularly every Friday with a group, and they literally brought in extraterrestrials from all sectors of the world. And in fact, one of the more famous one is Ashtar, which is probably one of a lot of modern day UFO channelers are connected with Ashtar and that group. So anyways, my uncle was in the thick of it, and the whole history of the whole thing is, for such a small place and a remote place out in the middle of nowhere, it's amazing the reach that my uncle had over the whole entire world. So of course, I'm looking around as far as with that prompted by him, and as far as looking at stories go. This one is the Butte. This is the Butte. But at any rate, so we're bottom line is that eventually there were gigantic conventions out there, some of as high as 14,000 people, and my uncle had developed a newsletter that was over 150,000 to 250,000 people around the world. This is before the day of the internet. So he kept on going, kept on doing this whole thing again, and building a network, and had some very, very, very dramatic things occur to him, of which, he was an entity, Soganda. He was contacted by this entity and literally taken up into a ship himself, woken up in the middle of the night, and brought out there, along with this continual stream of extraterrestrials that came there and visited Giant Rock, which when you go out there, which I was just out there about a month ago, you really see the magnitude of this rock out in the middle of nowhere and next to a dry lake. So if you're going to go somewhere, it's going to be here. It's going to be there. So essentially, that's what it was. Went on till these conventions, the Integratron, and which is in fact a cell rejuvenation machine that he got the information from the aliens. He created this dome-like structure where people even today go out there and sit in and enjoy the benefits of sound baths and deep metaphysical contemplation even today. So his legacy is continued, and so I guess my whole thing is to keep getting the story out there and give credit where credit is due, because we've had a lot of people that are out there doing the same techniques. I won't mention any names as far as space, UFO space channelers, and they're not giving him the credit, because actually he's the one that was quoted by a Life magazine person when asked how he contacted them, and he told them it was he had developed the technique as data transmission. And so when asked to elaborate on that, he said, well, he says, well, how do you talk to him? And he says, well, it's almost like a channel. So that's how the term channel came up. And so everyone from Jay-Z Knight to all these other people who are, channeling either, UFO extraterrestrials or discarnate spirits or whatever, the whole term channel came from my uncle. So, from that comment to a Life magazine reporter, which instantly made the cover of by virtue of making a prediction of having one of the largest UFO space flyovers happen in circa July of 1952 in Washington D.C., of which scared the holy hell out of everybody in government policies, because they knew it was all these ships were up there, and every time they'd go try to chase them, they'd move over and then they'd return. Well, this is a couple of things that got my uncle eventually on the cover of Life magazine, but also he became a person of interest in the various presidential administrations from Truman all the way up through Nixon. So everyone knew my uncle and knew what was going on. The intelligence agency knew of him. A lot of them didn't like him because he was not under the umbrella of the U.S. government. He literally was controversial with his nuclear testing.
It does seem like this story got buried, though, doesn't it?
It does. There is that whole thing. I kind of wonder, why did this thing get buried? Well, it's coming out, and if I have anything to do about it, and we'll get it out. But it is amazing. It's like it is interesting, because I would think that this would be probably the preeminent storyline. But again, it is what it is, and so we'll do it and get it out when we have to. So.
Well, I think like I was telling you on the phone, there are some people that it's getting out there because I heard some young kids at Conscious Life Expo talking about it. So some people do know about it, so that's good.
Well, it is, and again, my whole thing. In fact, I even sent them, I sent them, emails, as far as first of all, to make them understand that I am the copyright holder, which to a lot of people doesn't, that doesn't mean that much. But I hold the intellectual rights to it. Now, it is a documentary, and I was actually talking to my son today, as far as that, he says, well, it's probably a good thing, and I'm not worried. But the key thing is that when it comes into the we have, not to be, snotty or whatever. We have a substantial amount of money involved in doing this, money and time. So, anyways, I had to kind of let people know. Say, hey, bottom line is, you don't own the story rights. I do, and so anyway, so consequently, it's but they're very careful. They rename everything. They don't touch in terms of Giant Rock. They do talk about my uncle. But they stay away from the whole Giant Rock franchise, which as far as branding goes, is probably one of the best and strongest branding opportunities there are. Giant Rock,
right? Char wants to know in the chat room, Chad, is Giant Rock the same as Red Rock?
No, it's not. Red Rock is out in Colorado. Red Rock is out in Colorado. This is they actually entertain there. I don't know if any people go out to Colorado. There's a place called Red Rocks. But no, the Giant Rock is different. It's completely different to any other place. But yeah, or the Red Rock I know of is in Colorado.
So I want to get into this story because I know a lot of things with your uncle, a little bit more in detail, and with you because you've had some things happen to you in your life as well. But right now, before we do that, I want to talk about this movie that you're trying to do because, we've been supporting you on this for a while, trying to get this going. And I know that the last time I talked to you, that you were wanting to do this movie, and I did read the book, which is fantastic. You guys need to get that if you can get it. I believe it's on like Kindle or PDF or something like that, right?
Yeah, well, Amazon. You can buy an ebook or you can buy an actual hardcover. From Amazon.
It's an awesome story. You wrote that really well, man.
Yeah, thank you.
The last time I talked to you, you wanted to get it out in the theaters, right? That's what you said.
Right. Well, first of all, originally it started off as a screenplay before actually the book, and originally that was the plan. I was actually had a guy who lived next door who happened to be an actor, and I was just talking to him on the beach. We're sitting on the beach. I was telling him about the whole story. He goes, "Oh yeah, that would be a really great subject matter for a movie." And I said, "Well, that makes a lot of sense. A movie, theatrical release, or now, streaming release on one of the various networks would also be, a definite possibility. But we thought about it, and I thought, God, yeah, heck, you have the X-Files, and you have, a few select movies, but, as far as the whole UFO genre, there's very little that's in the whole caliber or category of as Giant Rock. So anyway, so I did, and apparently, he really liked it. He was working with Chris Christopherson and some various people. Anyway, so they all wanted to do it. Well, it didn't work out during that time period because of of some really weird creative control, and that's a story its own self as far as making the movie of Giant Rock. And so consequently, we've just kind of been out there, looking for resources and people who want to make this thing happen. Obviously. I'm doing because it's the right thing to do. But as far as on the monetary end, the thing is huge. I mean, as far as it could go in an international theatrical release. As far as the content, because nothing's out there like this. It's so different, and it combines the metaphysical and that's what I'm seeing going on right now, which is a good thing. Is where instead of just looking at tin pans flying out there is this whole different complexity and texture as far as the whole ufology. It is in part interdimensional. It is in part extraterrestrial, et cetera, et cetera. But it combines both of them versus just a static or essentially a materialistic way of looking at UFOs, extraterrestrials, and things like that. Which that has really been it from the beginning. That whole side of it, the whole metaphysical side of not only time travel, quantum physics, and things like that. In fact, that's what the book and the screenplay touch upon, and it's a little bit more complex than just seeing a flying pan up out in the flying saucer up in the sky. The dimensions of it is just so incredibly deep. It's even hard to explain. That's why actually when when the whole idea of streaming TV and series TV, I could either take the story in a trilogy type.
Right. I was going to ask you about that. You could do it in several different episodes if you wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, I think that just between the book and the book basically provides about at least 3, maybe 24 different segments of a storyline. So, at any rate, so that's kind of what we came across. However, in the lion's den of this whole, and I have been noticing a huge transformation as far as in the whole. It's going. If you go into a movie theater, you'll see 10 people in there. Well, there's
exactly. I was going to bring that up, man, because Chad, the last time I talked to you, I was like, hey, these YouTube's coming out with their own TV stuff. I don't even think YouTube knows what they are anymore.
No,
but they're coming out with their own TV thing. All of these people are doing this because Netflix is smashing people. They've got all these big name stars and stuff doing these movies and stuff now on Netflix. It's insane. And the last time I talked to you, I was like, hey, why don't you try to get this thing on Netflix? And you still wanted to go to the theaters with this. I mean, are you thinking about doing that at all yet?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, it went from, originally 5 years ago, went from, from not really considering it simply because of the quality that I'd seen on the stuff, to now it's a real possibility as far as doing that. And not only is there Netflix, there's Amazon, Hulu TV. God, I mean, you name it. I mean, everyone is essentially becoming a content on a studio level with this live streaming type thing. So it is transformed and the quality of stuff that I've been seeing, especially from Amazon. Amazon Studios have come out with just,
they got their own movies now too. Their own Amazon movie. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So Netflix still is the big daddy of the whole thing, and they seem to, but the quality is actually improving, and the depth of the writing, all that. So this fits right in the whole category as far as that, and it would do that, and it would actually do Giant Rock would do it justice as far as that, and actually I envision this thing's possibly now is possibly like a Breaking Bad almost type thing.
Yeah.
As far as an episode type thing. Yeah.
I'm going to agree with Joseph in the chat room here. He says, with all the companies starting new streaming services like we were just talking about, it could be a good series if you can get a good production company behind this movie. Is that the issue? Is getting the money raised for a good production company?
Right. Well, there's a couple ways to go about this, and I've been woefully unsuccessful as far as attracting the right production company with the right contacts, within the whole Hollywood, thing.
Yeah, you don't want them to step all over it, and that's probably what they'll do. It's hard to get people not to do that.
Well, the other thing too is in the food chain, the writer is at the bottom of the food chain, and obviously there's a lot of reasons for that too. They basically they're going to spend a ton of money. They want to try to figure out how to make something work. Well, this is something that doesn't need to be messed with as far as that stuff goes. And so from a creator's, as far as and also too. I'm not going to give up my total creative rights for any amount of money, because I'm suspicious of not only the intelligence agencies that have infiltrated a lot of the media, and what I want is something, it's just to get a fair representation. I'm not that difficult to work with as far as that, but there are some stupid things that early on I was actually witnessing that they wanted to do with my story, and I'm thinking, Jesus H. Christ, you can't be this stupid. And the answer is yes, they can. I mean, they really are. And so yeah, you run into problems. So I'll always, I'll forego a certain amount of cash just for to maintain some creative control, in the production. And as far as the other thing too is this thing was written through my eyes, and I just can't see anybody else they could do it justice. Now there are some slick directors and showrunners, et cetera, and I get it. Definitely want to work with them, but it is tricky, and it's very difficult to get the right circumstances. And to tell you the truth, I just haven't bumped into the right people as far as this. Now another way to go is, of course, create a pilot. As far as that, and that trumps. That gives you a lot of control, and that's been the biggest goal, is to get enough money. Go ahead. Doesn't
a pilot is something that you do it once, and then you hope somebody picks it up after they watch it, right? Or they see how much of a response it gets, and then they decide if they're going to go with it. Right.
What they do is they'll greenlight it, and this is what production companies do. They will, and essentially that's what Clarity Resources is. It's a production company. We just don't have the resource to proceed. But what it does, it gives you great idea of what what the show is going to look like, and then a company will greenlight it, and they'll end up putting the money up for so many episodes. Now it used to be, and this is one of the things that's remarkable, is the amount of money that they're actually coming up with to do these stories justice. Now that's been transitioned from, here, let's throw a little bit of money at something like this, and once you're picked up and they can see the idea, see what you're doing as far as that, which I honest to God don't understand why they just don't read the book, because that should really tell you all. It really unfolds.
Yeah, the book is amazing.
Yeah, so it unfolds, the storyline unfolds, and so you really know, you can visualize it through the book. But that would be the best thing. Say, hey, Chad, let's do 12 things. But there's a whole different world, and it's almost like people do business with who they know, and you have these cliques, within Hollywood, and I don't care whether you're in Little Rock, Arkansas. You got Billy Joe Bob. You're having a few beers, and it's an insider's deal.
It is, man. It's hard to get in there. I talked to on Beyond the Strange when I co-hosted for Dave Cruz on his show, and spoke to Manu Intiraymi, who is he was on Star Trek, and he's got this whole circuit thing going, which is a sci-fi movie, and I think it's a sci-fi series. Really cool idea. He's got this GoFundMe going on. It's not GoFundMe, actually. It's Kickstarter where it's on. And he's doing really good with that. And I always thought, if you could get the right people to say, hey, if you raise this much money, I'll jump in, producers and all. But I mean, it's really delicate. But here's the thing, Chad, with all the stuff going on now, with the disclosure release from the government and so-called, them admitting it is wild to me. So that's good enough for me. And then when you get on Netflix, you look at these, Agent 17 or Patient 17, or I think that's the name of it. They've got it all over the place. Sci-fi, everything. It's like it's a big push now. So, and I know that you've been pushing this for so long, brother. I know, but I feel like this is the time to get this thing going because it's in the now. It's in the zeitgeist right now,
It definitely is, and there's two things that surprise me. Number one, I'm surprised that it's not Giant Rock isn't done yet. I mean, as far as that, yeah, I would think, and I've seen, people try, go on the fringes, try to do a little copycat documentary, this or that on that stuff. No, number one, I mean that's what's happening. I know people because I actually, the various studio spies and what have you, they contact me on a regular basis and trying to see if I'm still around, trying to see what's going on, blah blah blah, trying to get an update, which I've learned to, as far as giving it, I just don't give out too much information, especially people are calling me and for no reason. I mean, I'm not in the business of basically chatting with with studio spies, but essentially that's what it is.
Yeah, man, they'll get you.
They will. And I know who they are, and it's like one guy called me, well, hey, what's going on? Do you have a minute? Can I talk to you? No, I don't have a minute. I said, I'm busy. I'm and I don't need other than just being rude, just saying, hey, listen, I know what you're trying to do here. Sure. So so I've told people, I said, listen, I said I'm either gonna either we're gonna make $1 billion off the Giant Rock franchise, or I'm gonna end up making $1 billion in the courts, because that's the kind of stuff that I've been seeing, versus saying, versus legitimate deal wanting to partner up or let us do what we do, they can do what they do, et cetera, et cetera. But the world doesn't work that way. And as far as goodwill goes, there's a commodity. I mean, basically it's like a bunch of wolves trying to tear it up and what have you. And that's the last thing that I want to do, is get in any kind of, intrigues or what have you, because I've been there, done that.
Well, something else I've learned too, Chad, is that if people think that the government's not involved with, I'm not just talking about the news, but also what we're watching, they are. They're extremely involved with it. And I've been really doing some conspiracy research, and it's amazing on some of this stuff. You could, take example for what Sophia Stewart and the Matrix stuff, right? That's a highly controversial thing. That, she's claiming that, and I've had her on Spaced Out Saturday. She's claiming that, this was my story. I wrote it in the book Third Eye Matrix. All the characters are the same. Every little detail is in these movies and in the Terminator. And I was a huge skeptic of that, Chad. I was like, whatever, because that's what we think from the outside looking in. But if you go to the source, if you read her book Third Eye Matrix, you will see, like, holy shit, they just took this from her. They just took it. There's so much detail here.
Yeah, no, there is that whole thing, and it's there, asses and eyebrows as far as up into all that stuff. And the shenanigans go on. No, this stuff is it is real. I mean, when you talk about all the skullduggery that's going on, and first of all, we've always known it. I mean, I've always known it. It just, as I get older, everything gets more and more confirmed. And case in point, really, I had to rewatch. I actually ended up buying it on TV. As far as this damn movie, when it came down to artificial intelligence, as far as that, we talk about HAL 9000 and 2001, that thing, basically that has been the blueprint. That's a blueprint for artificial intelligence. We're actually seeing it in real times, which it's been going on, with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and with all the sci-fi writers. It's always been stolen. The vision has always been out there that some of us have been able to capture as far as what's happening. Well, now, like for instance, HAL 2001. Well, you have computer bots, and what brought it up was, when the stock market had kind of burped a few weeks ago and dropped a couple thousand points. Well, there was no human being with their finger on the switch. That was all computer generated. That literally, that with all the formulation of all the intelligence, everything that's out there, it said that that it needed to get out of equities, and said that yes, there's inflation that's going to happen in a big way. And so what it do? It dumped all its share, and there were no takers or buyers with that. It had nothing to do with a human being. So everyone's 501ks, everyone's net worth, etc., at least for a week, were essentially controlled by bots, by these other entities. Now, I don't know, some people really, if they look at their 501,
their 401ks.
401k retirement plans. Well, they got literally wasted, there for a couple of weeks, as far as that. So their whole future was basically decided by a bunch of computers within a matter of weeks. It is when you think about it. And so, and everyone's shaking their head. No one had a reason other than what these computers had literally formulated, had extrapolated through all the data that they were getting, that the inflation was going to go pretty high, and that equities would lose their value, being out of stocks, okay, and being out of 401ks and et cetera, et cetera. So that's the world that we live in. Everything is decided based on an algorithm. Your credit worthiness, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the science. That's the science fiction world that we live in.
I'll tell you another article I read the other day, Chad, which was incredible to me. That the alien hunters and the cryptocurrency people that were trying to mine for cryptocurrency are fighting over the manufacturing of GPUs. The demand for the GPUs is enough to, we can get online and buy one right now, but these guys need a lot of GPUs to do what they do, and they're fighting amongst each other because there's not enough supply for them.
Right.
We are in the future. And I promise you guys, if you turn on Netflix, if you go right now and turn Netflix on your TV, just look at all of the new series and shows. You go 3-4 down the line, at least one or two of them is going to be a new sci-fi series. It started with the comic book thing, sci-fi. Now everybody knows that the alien thing. It's out there. It's real. At least they know we saw the ships. But this whole reason why I have you on tonight, and we're going to get into the story. We're going to get into Chad's story, is why this movie hasn't been made yet. Why hasn't it been out? Why has this story not been told? In my opinion, this is one of the biggest stories that should be told because there's so much involved with it. And it's incredible to me how it's not at the top of the food chain when it comes to the media for ufology,
Right. It is, and there's all these turf battles too, and again, I actually, I talked to my uncle back in the day about that was the biggest number one headache is that George Adamski hated his guts because he thought George Van Tassel got more attention, and the George Van Tassel was on more radio and TV stations than George Adamski, or it would go back and forth, and then you have all this, all the various turfs. We still have it. And that's why, as far as the biggest thing, I refuse to throw myself inside of all that, all the minutia and all the nonsensical stuff that's going on, in that whole world, simply because it loses the translation. So I've just kind of said, hey, listen, I just want to make a movie and write a book, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to go out and do panels with, David Greer or Stephen Greer or David Wilcox or any of these people.
You've been invited to a lot of those, though, hadn't you?
I have, and I respectfully refuse to do it because, like Stephen Greer claims that, that they're all, that all extraterrestrials are benevolent. Okay, that's not true. I mean, I know that's not true. The research actually states it's not true, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of wonder, and then I look at his background, and not casting any dispersion on him. He got some early money from the Rockefellers and some of the who's who as far as in that whole thing. Well, yeah. He he that's where he got going. So okay, so there's a little bit of a cloud for me. Yeah, a little bit of cloud. Now again, I mean, hey, money's money, and when you're doing research, well, now we have Tom DeLonge, and we have the CIA group that with his deal. But there's a gigantic rivalry going on.
I'm glad you called it for what it is. The CIA group, yeah, that's controlling the narrative.
Right. So bottom line is that here's Chad, and that's the same thing. It's the same thing as George Van Tassel and Chad Meek. We're out here actually in the middle of nowhere, saying, "Hey, wait a minute. Let's just let's calm down here before we start, joining any groups or any alphabet soups and having them control the narrative. Let's really find out what's going on, as far as that." And that's, I think, the almost the at the heart of the story of Giant Rock is what my uncle was literally just trying to facilitate everyone's idea or concept on this whole thing. So that's why he held conventions. That's why he's fairly popular, as far as on some of this stuff. He took kind of a lower key type, position, more and more matter of fact, as far as that, and just kind of went about his business. And I kind of admire him for all. And there were a lot of controversy, and that went on along with that. The intelligence. Heck, if you look at any of the old photographs, it's the who of the alphabet soup, the CIA, the FBI. They're all out there sitting there, all being buddies with everybody incognito, out at the Rock, with this stuff here. And my uncle knew who they were, so nothing's really changed when it comes to that whole, idea as far as that whole thing. Nothing's really changed, but just to keep your sanity, you just don't want to get involved with any of this controversy and what have you, because again, it's almost like somebody's trying to control the narrative, with some of these people. Tom DeLonge, his big thing was, he wasn't ready to be launched as far as with some of the stuff, and so he got on the Joe Rogan show and I guess kind of embarrassed himself because he just didn't have the information or the background other than his interests, and he wasn't an experiencer. And see, that's also the key thing too, if I'm looking at people who are talking about a particular subject, yeah, it's good, but also as an added component, if a person has actually experienced something into that whole thing, whereas Tom DeLonge hasn't, I think, well, you need to go. It just needs to kind of happen to give you kind of a more rounded viewpoint as far as what this is and that whole thing goes. So yeah, anyways, not to cast dispersion. And David Wilcox, Ancient Aliens, et cetera, there's this whole cottage industry and we're seeing it, and we're seeing the resurgence of this whole thing with with these various conventions and things like that. And so for now, I just, the other thing too is there's absolutely no money in it, as far as going to, and my hat goes off to all those people that are out there running around doing that. But I'm just not into it. Really, what the main thing is I control the narrative as far as the story here, and I got to do everything I can to make sure it's done right and to get it out. But that's what I see is going on out there. And there's rivalries that come up, and there's a spy versus spy, and there's one group of CIA people that say this, there's one group of CIA people that say this, and they're at each other's throat. so it's kind of like keeping your life simple.
I know George. I know he stirred up the pot, man, because when they all got down there, they had him boxed in. So he had to scare somebody. He did rattle some cages. And like I said, we're going to get into a little bit more detail into the story because Chad's just kind of combing over it. But right now, I wanted to make sure that you guys know that one of the biggest UFO stories out in the world, in my opinion, and if you look into it, you could get on YouTube. Just get on YouTube, type in George Van Tassel or the Integratron. You should know about it if you study ufology. Sorry, but you should.
It is a cornerstone. Yeah, you're right.
And the thing about George Van Tassel, man, is I've talked to a lot of people in this field, and they're just positive. It's almost like they're putting on a facade sometimes, right? A Hollywood facade. Sure. But when you watch the interview with George Van Tassel, he is telling the truth from his point of view.
Right.
You could tell by the deep stare in his eyes. It's the same stare that Oppenheimer had when he was talking about the atom bomb.
It's just so funny that I guess the authentic And although it was a little bit he grew up in Jefferson, Ohio, so he definitely had a lot of Midwest attributes, basically coming out. But essentially, he was just telling just to calm the way he see it, and it comes across as that too. And I have all his channeling tapes, or at least the majority of them.
That out on the web?
No, I have the actual physical.
Oh man,
tape.
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so I've got him, and so I listened. But this whole thing of as far as where he was stretching his own, not only scientific but also his own knowledge as far as this, and trying to express it in something that's a workable format. You can see how he'd actually kind of somewhat struggle as far as that, because he wasn't slick. He wasn't he wasn't trying to. I don't know. It's just matter of fact, and and then people would try to, basically, some people would make, kind of snide remarks or try to come up with he was, some sort of wacko and what have you. But he just held his ground and just came out and said that. So a lot of that stuff, if you can imagine the frustration.
Well, they never put him in a padded room, right?
Right. No, but I think they would have liked to. As far as that goes, and I think that they tried to actually drive him crazy with the, various things. They'd play games with him quite often. Of course, there were the nude photos and everything.
Did he ever take a lie detector test?
Oh God, I think he took a bunch of them.
He did. Did he? See, yeah. This is why. This is the thing. Like the Travis Walton case, everybody knows about that. Everybody knows he took a lie detector test, and so did all the people that was there.
They passed.
And they passed several times. And there's still. People still to this day trying to negate that story, and I don't see how they can. I really don't. But I feel like that the George Van Tassel story is one of those type of stories, non-negotiable in a lot of ways. Now, as far as the metaphysical stuff, the things that we obviously can't prove unless we have our own experience, right? But as far as what he's talking about, as far as like all you can do when it comes to that is give me a lie detector test. Let's do a regression. At some point, you're going to have to take somebody's word for something. And your uncle was a pretty stand-up guy. I don't think he's just going to go around. He had no money reasons for doing this or fame reasons,
No, it was really the irony of it, the whole thing is what he was channeling. He was channeling in information that he did not know himself. In fact, one of the whole things as far as what, above ground nuclear testing, hydrogen testing was doing the atmosphere, and we're actually still feeling the ramifications from that above ground testing today. And he came out again in the 50s and said, hey, the extraterrestrials have told me to tell you that you're damaging not only our own environment in our own world, but parallel universes. Like, hello, parallel universes. Come on, man. I mean, now parallel universes and this whole other dimensional type things is quite common within the scientific realms. I mean, if it's been proven scientifically that it actually has happened, we've heard it from the beginning of time. But again, you have this guy, out in the middle of nowhere talking about destruction of parallel universes through nuclear testing. And again, everything adds up. 1 + 1 = 2, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what was happening is after every nuclear explosion, what would happen? We would see there'd be another explosions of sightings, extraterrestrial sightings. So and I guess the other thing too is it's not so much does your work or does your word outlive your own existence? And what's going on with George and this is Van Tassel and of course some of the others as far as what's going on is that it does. In fact, you right now, the Integratron is still basically out there. It survived. The rock has survived. My uncle's work has survived. And actually, in some very strange way, I think I've had a certain amount of, involvement on both the practical and the psychic realm as far as keeping this this whole idea alive, and we need to go down these roads again, revisit them, and pick up on some of my uncle's research and see what can be done, or just by merely combining assets, minds, et cetera, to basically push along this narrative, which is it is one world. We are one world, and we are one universe. All is one, et cetera, everything that all is one always keeps coming up on, in all the deeper and deeper occultic philosophies, and that's essentially what it is. It's what is happening right now is we're a polarized world, and that is
there's
big
no
fight.
doubt about that. Even in the alternative community with mystics and occultists and all that, they're extremely polarized. Then you got solipsism, where you run into these guys that they just know everything about everything. They've been there, done that. They know it all.
Right.
And you can't get through to them either. But at least they're not polarized, right? Because they know it all.
Right.
But the thing about it is I think that we do need to revisit this again. That's why I wanted to have you on here. I want you guys to really go check out, Giant Rock the movie. Get the book, for heaven's sake. Get it, read it, because you're going to love it. Dig into the George Van Tassel story. I think that you're going to want to push for this. And if you can, reach out to Chad. If you know somebody or anybody in the field of film, television, production, anything like that, to help move this along, because I think this is going to be one of the stories that changes the game. So in the next section of our show here, what we're going to do is the next hour, we're going to kind of detail the story a little bit more with George Van Tassel. And then we're also going to get into some of the stuff that's happened with Chad. So you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. This is Spaced Out Saturday. I love each and every one of you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Lorian Fenton here, SOR listeners. Join me at UFOCon 2018 in South San Francisco, California, March 23rd through 25th, where 14 presenters discuss all things disclosure, UFOs, and aliens. Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, and Melinda Leslie address disclosure. Preston Dennett will present Inside UFOs. Your Dave Scott and Lynn Buchanan tell of amazing alien contact. Get tickets at caufocon.com.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruse, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live, and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, we own the night.
The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. This is Spaced Out Saturdays with host Joe Rube. You can follow Joe on Twitter at Lighting the Void. And if you want to call into tonight's show, dial 501-777-5631. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, from the deep south of Arkansas, here is Spaced Out Saturday host Joe Rube.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Saturday. Thank you, Bob. Much appreciated, sir. I am your host, Joe Roop. Tonight on Spaced Out Saturday, we're here with Chad C. Meek. Don't forget, tomorrow night, Elizabeth Anglin's going to be on. And after the show tonight, if you're listening on the Fringe FM, or you can go on Spreaker, you can listen to S4 as well. And then Dave Scott's going to pick it up again next week. Don't forget, Spaced Out Radio's here for you 7 nights a week. And also go to GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night so you can help us to upgrade the studio as we get on these new terrestrial stations. A lot going on. And we're here with Chad Meek, and we had talked about the movie in the first hour and what he's trying to do with Giant Rock, the movie, trying to get the story out. Now, as I've noticed, I've looked on Twitter, the SOR Space Travelers Club. I'm looking in the Spreaker chat. I'm looking into, and this is my point, some people have no idea what this is about. So what I want to do, and I know that you, Chad, you're probably beating your head on the table here, but let's talk about your uncle a little bit. What do you know about him? I mean, did he reveal any of this to you when you were young? Tell us the story about him.
Well, I mean, you got to remember, I was out there. Now, first of all, I'll be 60 May 3rd, 1958. So
You're
in case
old,
someone
man.
me,
You're getting
yeah,
old.
I know. Send me a birthday card with money. I'll give you an address after the show. But anyways, but all kidding aside, I was out there during the 60s. Okay, and so we're talking about really from the ages of 4 to 10 years, I was actually physically living out there, with them. And then after that, it was just an occasional hello, what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. So I, as far as the age goes, I was just experiencing all of the whole thing, all the events that were going on out there. But I wasn't old enough to have any kind of intelligent conversations, with him, as far as in any depth. And so a lot of the information I've got, came later in bits and pieces through his grandson, and a lot of the more sophisticated stuff as far as with regards to time travel and what have you, and actually bits and pieces of people coming to me later on who knew him. And actually, I got the whole a bigger part of the story out from people after my uncle had died in 1978. So as far as me knowing him, I was just a snot-nosed little kid running around telling him I didn't believe in UFOs, and him telling me that, yeah, you will someday, boy, and boy, sure enough, I do. but the bottom line is that so I'm kind of like a lot of people, as far as this. I do have a lot of I do have some background papers on some of the work he did. I have his channeling tapes, and of course and other things, which are all in value. I mean, just absolutely,
Well, how did this start happening to him? Did he just stumble upon this?
Well, no. What he did was it was by direct contact. He had learned how to channel. They used to call Frank Kreitzer. Again, it comes back to Frank Kreitzer. They used to call him Crazy Kreitzer because he was always telling people this is when George was working with Howard Hughes in Los Angeles. Frank Kreitzer was out there living. He was out there channeling spaceships out there. And as far as the technique and how he did it, God only knows, but he was a very, very special person who passed the baton to my uncle, who actually he started doing and started perfecting this channeling, and essentially it was just a training of the mind as an instrument, and he perfected it. He actually perfected his ability to contact through his essence.
So he didn't see a UFO at first. He started communicating with beings at first.
He started communicating with them at first, and then the experiences. This is what happens to me. This is the same thing with me. I mean, it's a two-prong type thing. I've never been a channeler, so to speak, on a conscious level where I sat out there like my uncle did on a very methodical. He would get a group down inside of the rock, which is its own conductor, had its own mystical properties. They would hold hands, they would pray, and then my uncle would literally be transformed in part through himself. And through this communication with the one of the groups, the Council of Seven Lights, and these various Ashtar, various Solganda, various entities that he became in close and regular communication with, as far as that. And they would show him things, and he would learn additional information or techniques or thought wave patterns, and he would just get, the more information he get, the more he would get, and it would just become more and more and more. So where literally he would literally transform himself in these channeling sessions into these entities. They would actually start speaking through him, and his voice would change dramatically into their voices, and his face would change, would become very similar to whatever entity that was literally using him as this vehicle to express this higher information, higher knowledge, of which some of it, became the blueprints for the Integratron, which is this essentially what it is. It's a cell rejuvenation machine, and along with all the information he had, and that's how he evolved. It all came by work and by meditation, came by communication, came by transference of information, and then occasionally what would happen is he would get the physical. He eventually got to the ability, depending where he's at, to get the physical ability to bring the ships down, and that had occurred. Quite often too. Literally they'd have a channeling session, and
this is kind of like what Greer does, right? Or something like that.
Right. So yeah, when I see all that, when I hear Stephen Greer's techniques, or some of these other guys, they're my uncle's techniques, and this is what kind of evolved. Or the Nine. There's another group called the Nine, and that was a part of the. With the DuPonts and that whole group, that was out in the Midwest, doing this stuff too. But this is what was going on. This is how he did it. As far as it was using himself as an instrument. And he would channel it just pretty much like the. And actually, I suspect that the prophets of old that had the insight, that they innately knew how, or were taught, or were brought along, or were initiated. You tell me how this communication occurred.
So you've listened to some of your uncle's tapes, excuse me, of him channeling these beings.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that they wanted to tell us that they said a lot?
Yeah, again, the key thing is the key theme, and this is a key theme in the book, is that everything is provisional. And that's the other thing too, is that people, in rare occasions, unless out of absolute necessity, do they take a pig and give them intelligence? I mean, really what it is provisional is what you know and what you've learned, et cetera, and how you conduct yourself. And the big theme, as far as in the various eons that we're going through, and the big theme is that we weren't ready and which is very true. We weren't ready for a lot of the technology and the things that would make our lives easier, as they would literally become weaponized. And sure as hell, that's what's happened as far as with every bit of technology becomes weaponized. In fact, including right now, they want to weaponize space. As far as that, and that's the big drive right now, is for the darker forces just to weaponize this whole entire universe, and again enslave us even more to our own nefarious aim. Yeah, our own tech. That's what's happened.
So say, for example, like atomic energy, when we made the nuclear bomb, we should have figured out that was supposed to be understood for something better. Or are you talking about something else, maybe?
Right. No, that's exactly right. In fact, that's supposedly in all the folklore of Atlantis and all the ancient civilizations. That was and even some of in the Rig Veda, they talk about these nuclear wars that were going on. And so it's nothing's new under the sun. But what happens is that with the more advancement, then the more powerful of the potential evil and misuse of the stuff occurs. And so again, as far as the messages that keep coming, and it was all provisional. It's like, hey, listen, if you guys figure out how to get along, then you're going to get this. If you guys don't figure out, you're going to probably, first of all, you're probably blast each other into the dark ages like it's happened before, to the civilization. So that was the main theme. That always went on, was that, hey, clean your act up, use the golden rule, et cetera, all the 7 deadly sins, stay away, et cetera, all the stuff that we all struggle with, as far as with this combination spirit animal body that we've got. That's what we've that's what we're here for, is to basically get control of ourselves and unite and unify, and everything is possible, and there will be no need, no want. Paradise will be there if we basically have this realization that all is one, and that we're all all together, And so that's what it is, instead of this whole fragmentation. And that's what, when you talk about anything, splitting atoms, you're talking about, fragmenting.
Same thing with consciousness, right? We split ourselves down.
Right.
Did George ever say where these beings were from? Did he ever mention like planets, galaxies, races?
Yeah, he did. He talked about, like a lot of the thing too, and this thing always bothered me as far as the whole Venusian, thing. However, Venusian and, everything has come from Venus. In fact, especially during the 50s, everything came from Venus. A lot of them came from, which I question. And then later on, I kind of figure out, well, listen, we live in an interdimensional world. Too, and what we might be thinking is Venus may not be Venus.
Yeah, see, I've always wondered about that because, in the Gnostic group of there's a guy named Samael Aunvior who teaches some like really high advanced Gnostic teachings, stuff that permeates everything in religion, and it's just like incredible information, right? And then you get to his books about these other planets, and he's talking about Venus, Mercury, all these other planets, and saying that they're inhabited by. Right. And I'm thinking, well, why in the hell don't we see them? We got all these pictures, we don't see nothing. Right. But according to his books, they're on another plane or on another level, possible. We can't see them because we don't have the consciousness to see them, or something like that.
Well, when my grandmother died, I saw her after she'd passed. Okay, coming down, because I've always had this, from very early on, I've always had this gift of being able to see, various things like that. And most people, I was right in between two of my brothers. They didn't see my grandmother, but hover over our bed, right. After. So, it is a perceptual type thing also, as far as that goes. So, but again, I have to throw it out there. I said, who am I? Just because I can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And it's the same thing too. So that when I hear that, it used to really bother me because scientifically, Venus is not a habitable, place for a human body, but that doesn't mean, some other type of spirit or a different dimension. So if you go back a little further on too, again, there are all these multi-dimensions that we exist. There's no empty space is going on here. So, yeah.
Did George ever mention? So he's talking to these beings. They're telling us to get our stuff together. And then they started telling him how to build the Integratron, right? Or how to make it.
Right. They wanted to, he wanted to have something, that was that was what he wanted to inquire of, how he could help. And I believe this too. This is some of the pieces I've just kind of put together. Howard Hughes was big on medical research. It was
the Aviator.
The Aviator was always big on medical research. And he also built a thing called the Spruce Goose. Okay, and there's where did he get all these ideas from? And that he had of building an airplane without any metal in there, et cetera, and and all that. Well, he was in communication. So here's probably what happened was with Howard Hughes, especially in the 60s. He was very ill health, and so he was really into medical research to help himself. Because he was a germaphobe and frightened all that. Well, he's got a friend named George Van Tassel that communicates with extraterrestrials, and I believe that's how the whole Integratron. This is the inside of the whole thing, and this is just only after my own. I don't. This is not fact. This
no,
is
it's just based on your observations. Right.
My observation. How did all that come together? Well, you got a guy with cash. And you got a guy with cash who's interested in medical research and all kinds of quirky scientific guy who actually built satellites, in space. And then you have a contemporary, or at least an associate out in the desert, who basically channels, knowledge from extraterrestrials. Well, wouldn't that make sense? The answer is yes. It would make a tremendous amount of sense for those two things to come together. And so a lot of the money came from donations from Howard Hughes. It also came from sweat labor from the family, from my dad, from everyone, as far as to build the Integratron. But the original design was channeled in from extraterrestrials to figure out a way to for molecular cell rejuvenation, so people could live longer. That was the whole basis of that of that. And then what it came along with it was, if you have cell rejuvenation, then of course you're going to have cell reformulation, which is actually the ability to time travel.
What was that, before we get into the time travel thing, was that have anything to do with like stem cells, like what we're into now, or was it something totally different?
Well, no, it's totally different. It's on the same principle, but at the time it wasn't that. And actually, George was working with physicists on this time travel. And one of the really great stories that had come to me was this neurosurgeon whose father worked with my uncle on time travel, who's a physicist. And the story goes is that he was a young guy, and the Men in Black, the Men in Black, this is the first time I had ever heard any real stories about the Men in Black. But this guy's a neurosurgeon, and he's a very evolved man, and I had no reason to doubt what he was telling me about his father. And he said the Men in Black came to his door, and he had actually witnessed them telling his father that if he did discontinue working with George Van Tassel, that they were going to come back and kill him and his family, that they were getting too close. And that's exactly what happened. The guy had never, from then on, he stopped working with my uncle for fear of, in fact, he went back to a very conventional Seventh-day Adventist religious church. And as far as space and time travel, ufology, et cetera, he stopped having anything to do with it. So that again, that's the whole benefit of being out there, is that, you get with these people and you hear these stories, and then you go and verify them, and like, oh God, yeah, you can say, oh yeah, your dad was working with my Uncle George. And so you go down a whole a whole sector, a whole line of reasoning as far as what was going on, putting the pieces together as far as along with Howard Hughes, the whole reason behind the Integratron, what they were doing, what they were trying to do. Now, also, as part of the Integratron, too, and this is part of the whole mystery, my uncle, he died. He wasn't a young guy, but he had a medical checkup 2 weeks before, and he was in great health. And all of a sudden, he ends up in a very mysterious hotel room about 60 miles away, had no business being there.
Nobody knows why he was there? He was just there?
No, he was just there, and that's where his body was, and he was dead of a apparent heart attack.
I smell CIA.
Yeah, you can smell intelligence agencies, or you can smell,
Did he ever do anything like that? Like, did he always announce where he went, or was this just something?
No, he was covert, as far as that, and I think that he was actually paranoid of the phone, as far as that, because he was worried, he was convinced that everything was being, there were listeners, on everything like that. So it's not him being out. It was out of character for him being away at that place at that time, but it wasn't out of character for him to slip away also too. So it was kind of, it's kind of a mixed bag. But it was, no one knew why he was there. No one knew he was just dead.
Okay.
Woke up dead.
Before we get into the Integratron stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All the stuff that's being told in ufology, the galactic federations, the reptilians, the Dracos, the blue avians, anything, did he ever mention any of this stuff?
Yeah, he did. He actually cataloged about 105 of them. As far as that, he had a working knowledge of that, and he was somewhat unbiased as far as, again, this gets into this whole thing, and again, it wasn't until I was asked this question, as far as, well, what do you think about the reptilian? I said, hell, I don't know I didn't know what he thought about the reptilian, so I had to actually go look and find out. But yeah, I mean, so the answer is, yeah, there are all these different entities, some of which are extremely angelic, and they're benefactors. And then you get into this whole, prime directive type thing, something out of, this, Star Trek or Gene Roddenberry's, type thing.
Prime directive of who? The aliens?
Right, of the whole Galactic Federation.
Oh, okay.
There is a prime directive, and there is some control over that, and there are some consequences. So there are benevolent extraterrestrials. There definitely are. In fact, there are by far more than there are these other darker entities that have been around for eons, as far as that. But there is this this federation that literally is a protective group of this planet. And what I've gathered is that this planet is of extraordinary interest. This is like the jewel of the galaxy, of this galaxy, and we're kind of at the fringe of that. So we're of interest also. So
I've also heard that some of the alien beings or species, or whatever you want to call them, have said that we're actually on the outskirts of a lot of life-filled universes. That's why we don't ever see any life or anything, because we're so far away from everything.
We are far. That's the thing. I've actually gone down that thread too. And the other thing too is that we're potentially toxic. That we're actually we're almost like a battlefield of this, too. With various entities, extraterrestrials. We're seeded by a whole multitude, which again, it comes into this whole Men in Black thing, where there's the big cartoon as far as with that, where there's some truth, to it. Yeah, we're actually there. There are all these different things going on. In fact, even within us, as far as we're seeded human beings, and you can see it. They talk about,
Well, Britney Spears is right, or I guess we're toxic. Huh?
Yeah, we're toxic. Yeah, we're toxic, and we're quarantined. We're actually quarantined.
How did he get in? Did he ever meet Jack Parsons, or did they just come down and check out the Integratron?
No, they all came down. No, they came down. Jack Parsons, Fontana is roughly about 30 miles away from Landers. Yeah, and where he experimented with all the various explosion, rocketry, et cetera, he did it there, and his partner again was L. Ron Hubbard, which again, L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology, a UFO whole thing, that all came out. Again, the timeline is just unbelievable, and he was out there with Jack Parsons trying to figure out how to channel. Now, Jack Parsons, of course, Babylon Rising. This is the occultic side of this whole thing, with the beast and all that whole thing. This all figures into all of this. It all segues into all of this, and it's during the same time period they were actually out there talking to my uncle, and all of a sudden, then L. Ron Hubbard creates the Scientology, and and with all the various essentially it's a UFO religion.
Well, the weird thing is, I know that Aleister Crowley in his books claim that he met a being called, and the being called himself the Lamb, right? And you look at the picture, and it looks like a gray.
Yeah, it looks like I know it's. I noticed that. That's crazy.
So the weird thing is that he goes through all of this spiritual stuff. He starts out with his own thing, then goes into the Golden Dawn, then they kick him out, and then he starts the OTO, and he's on the spiritual ride, and invoking these Egyptian gods and stuff, and talking about the new Aeon. But at the end of the ride, he meets this alien-looking thing.
Right. He meets this alien-looking thing, and that's what takes him to this new realm of what he's had. But here's the whole mystery. If you go into this, most all religions, you see that if you go to the Vatican, you'll see spaceships, et cetera, and everyone's very coy about this stuff, very well concealed as far as extraterrestrials. And if you go into the Mormon faith, they have the Kolob, they have this, they have this whole.
And everybody's going to get their own planet and all that stuff.
Right,
yeah.
Right. It's a whole thing, and it's amazing. And yet, everyone, all these are so-called mainstream religions. And if you look at them, I mean, it's clearly evident as far as where their origins are coming from, where their thought process, so their own existence of their own religion. So again, I bring up the point. Well, Jesus could have very well been, and there's a huge debate in the whole world of whether Jesus was a composite or and that or he was actually a real guy. But I would point out that as far as his philosophy, and him being the direct descendant of God, or son of God, etc., etc., that's debatable as far as that. I would consider him an alien.
Well, I know John Polk wrote a book called Yahweh, the Alien God. So
yeah,
and I was like, what? Until I read it, and there's some pretty interesting stuff in there. So
well,
pretty compelling evidence too. Not evidence, but I would say correspondence if you look at the stuff. And I know, guys, we're throwing a lot at you, but that's what I'm saying. Like the George Van Tassel story, it started in the beginning and ties into a lot of things that. It really is a big story. I'm wondering though. I'm wondering what. So you have the tape. You have tapes of him channeling. Is stuff on these tapes that have never been heard before? Do you have that?
Yeah, I have that, and it's some of it. It takes a lot of patience to sit there and listen to every word of this whole thing. And I've listened to it all, but it'd be like listening to the Bible on tape almost. You get a lot of abstract ideas. You just have to be in the right mood and mode to listen to this stuff here. And some of it's somewhat corny. Some of the science is a little weird, but it's definitely different. And he goes in these different entities, different voices, as far as that, and how he enters in with them. He'll a big part of the whole thing was his positioning. He would literally dial in as far as this, and he would give direction to these various entities to either to speak slower. And it's hard to explain them unless you're listening to them. It is. I'm at a loss. You'd say, "Would you slow down, fella?" And you literally get frustrated. He says, "You're talking too damn fast. I don't understand." So you're actually hearing these two-way conversations about dual polarities and how things are created and all kinds of stuff. So it's very, very different.
We're good friends, Chad. You know that, right?
We're
buddies. We are buddies. So you ought to let me listen to some of that stuff one of these days.
I will. I will. No, you will, definitely. We'll get together and lay it out. Right now they're on cassette. They all need to be digitally remastered. And put on some other.
I can help you with that.
Thank you. Okay.
Definitely help you with that. So, all right. So this is where he started with George. He started communicating with these beings, validating a lot of the stuff that we heard. They're telling us, that we're not ready for a lot of things. Here's some things that we need to do. So we need to stop, creating our own weapons with the technology we're using and use them for good. And take us into the Integratron.
Well, really, it was actually, I think it was it was never fully operational, and we're inside it. Okay,
First off, what exactly is the Integratron?
Well, it's really an acoustical neutral place, that you can go on and face the planet. Now, also too, again, the coordinates of where it was built. Along with giant rock, has some correlation on some grid with
some kind of energy vortex,
right? G vortex, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that was it too. The other thing too is you have a massive amount of water, underground water, out there in the middle of the desert. In fact, the water comes up. It actually seeps up. I remember the well water at my grandmother's place was like 65 feet. So you got a fairly shallow water, and it goes pretty. There's a lot of water, there too. So even though you're out in the middle of the desert, you're literally you're really on top of a pretty big, dynamic, water source. So, at any rate, so it took them 18 years to really build it. They were trying various things. They had they did run a Tesla coil, through it, through that was the one thing that they did as far as metal.
Really, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. They had that. So they had tried, and he was trying to, and he was channeling, getting information, we're talking about something very, very sophisticated, but inside it was, if you look inside of it, it was it was a dome. It was the floor was, it was all made out of wood, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what people get out of it now is they get a real sense of calming with these sound baths just because of the acoustical and the place that it's at. But and it's a dome, so the shape of it resembles almost like a mosque, as far as out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it resembles a mosque as far as the whole structure, and people come from all over the world to sit in the damn thing. I mean, it's got this wide, varied reputation, and some people who are very sick with cancer, what have you, have had some intriguing, I won't say recoveries, but they felt better. They felt like they had their cells rejuvenated, and they felt better after going in there. So, I used to play in that place as a little kid, and that was my, my grandmother's place. It was just you could hit it with a baseball, from my grandmother's house. So it was, we were over there. And
Cat's wondering in the chat room, Chad, if there's ever been any EVPs recorded in that place.
I think there has. I don't. I've heard there was, but yeah, I've heard there was. So I haven't got any further than that. I just heard there was.
It does make you wonder, though. When you talk about ancient technology, when I hear the word technology, I think about computer chips, lasers, that kind of technology, machines, stuff like that. But I think, honestly, a higher technology is something that the ancients understood. Reasons that, like John Anthony West and other people talked about what the pyramids were actually for. And now you see these people using pyramids, and they meditate in them. They've proved that pyramids have certain energy vortexes and stuff. So that's a real thing now. It's not something that you have to wear a tinfoil hat and talk about.
Right. Well, again, the whole material scientific world has actually screwed us out of more discovery simply because of of this whole regimented practice of and procedures of getting somewhere. Literally, and it's like this, everything is like, 1, 2, 3, everything's linear. But the whole thing is that a lot, discoveries are really out of the box. They take quantum leaps. They go from, B to G, or whatever. And you just have to be able to figure it out and get it down. And we're without scientific proof. And that's one thing I listen to these Degrassis and everyone like this,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I want to see a picture, I want to see a picture of of you and an alien.
Oh, you mean you'll never have enough evidence for Neil.
Right. It's not going to happen. He says, oh, well, and then when you provide it, he's going to say, well, it's Photoshop. And then, then you go down the whole litany of stuff. But
in all fairness, though, Chad, Neil deGrasse, he's a scientist, so he bases everything in his life on scientific data,
on a religion, on the
you could call it that, sure.
Yeah. It's the same thing too. You get, like, I don't care. Every religion has its own practices, and it doesn't. And the reason they maintain them being a religion with these religious practices, they do them over and over and over redundancy, but it does not fit for anybody coming in and coming and saying, hey, I've had a religious experience where I talked to Jesus. Well, first thing they're going to say is, you didn't talk to Jesus.
Right. Prove it. You didn't talk to Jesus. Yeah, I get it. So, back to George. He's doing his thing. He's channeling. Now the Integratron was given to him by these beings. The design or what it was really for, they told him about this, right?
Right, I believe in part. Also, too, again, here's the simplified version as far as with my uncle. And this is really, it's very difficult to explain what he was doing, because he was not only was he a channeler, he was a very open mind. He was inquisitive. He was an inventor, and he did things. I mean, he literally, and he tried different things. It wasn't like, oh, Jesus Christ, here is the plan, and do this. Again, it was a holistic. Thing that, we're going to move you along with this whole thing, provided that, that you can, the civilization could. And then I think about, okay, so what would happen if, in fact, again, it's rumored that people had some very interesting recoveries, by sitting in the whole thing. What do you think would have happened had that thing been fully operational at a given time in competition with modern medicine? It would either be ridiculed, laughed, which it was anyways, or burned down. And and not without getting, they say, and who they are, I don't know, but who they say that there's cures for cancer out there, or that there, and then they talk about all these naturopaths who've been murdered down in Florida when they actually have various ideas and cure for cancer. What's the biggest industry out there, though? The cancer industry, and the whole medical industry, pharmaceutical industry. So there are several components as far as why things don't get done out there. And a lot of them are fact is stranger than fiction.
True that.
Some of these,
by the way, Tech Man in hashtag Spaced Out Radio dropped a picture of the Integratron there on Twitter. So if you want to guys go see that, it's still people come from all around to see that thing, huh?
Yeah, they do. It's funny. I had, I was out there a month ago and was shooting a documentary. There's a guy, he wanted me to be on his, get in front of that thing. So I went out there and visited with him. I'd known him for a while, and god dang, man, the funny thing about it is there were about 18 different people sitting around watching us shoot that thing out at the Rock.
Really?
And the Rock is next to Integratron. So I always meet people going into the Integratron. You get to it first, then you go to the Rock, which is roughly about a mile and a half away from it. But through that, I always meet a lot of people from all over, from Austria, from Japan, God, you name it. It's amazing the amount of people that have an interest to this. Of course, I call this whole area and this whole time period, along with my uncle, as this is like this is a crossroad. It's a crossroad, kind of almost like a Twilight Zone type thing.
It's definitely that. There is that Twilight Zone thing about it. I get that when I watch his interviews. When he was being interviewed, it felt like a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah,
and I can only imagine what he went through. Think about what the man went through. You can imagine going to the public and saying all these things, and you're just a good old boy, but you're saying all these things. The public's going to look at you totally different now. You're a different person.
Absolutely. Well, and also too, the banner that he would do in his reach was amazing. When you talk about the man, he grew into his position as far as that. And again, after Roswell, it was everything was real hot and heavy, especially during the 50s. Too. I mean, as far as and the 60s, things started to change a little bit. I mean, it wasn't as there was a change that started to occur in the 60s, and it all kind of went away from the whole ufology. I mean, it wasn't the big, the 50s were the big time, and my uncle was big. In the 60s, well, you had the Beatles, and you had this other kind of cultural thing pop up, that it wasn't as, and then in the 70s, everything got materialistic and pretty dark. And so his whole influence ebbed and flowed during that time period. And so, and then of course,
I can imagine what people thought when he started talking about time travel. Travel, really?
Well, again, then you get into a scientific clash as far as this stuff goes. Now, also too, everyone has really they have very weak memories too, because they talk about time travel. They talk about spaceships and the Rig Veda. You talk in all the ancient Vedic texts. You've got this whole thing that now that during the time period they kept on saying it was all mythology. Everything was mythology. This was not true. The especially the English Indo historians, they essentially went to India and rewrote their history through translation, and they got it all wrong. And now, since they've had satellite imagery and all this stuff, they're talking about these various battles, rivers. They're describing all these events that occurred to the T, and now they find out through satellite imagery that cities actually existed. And what's and again too, there's things that are just being revealed and talk about a quantum leap. I mean, the whole Mayan culture, right now. In fact, I was just reading this. They found, down there, they found remnants of a city the size of Manhattan. As far as that, whereas for years and years, we're talking about the Mayan population is very small, very condensed.
They also found a huge 200-mile tunnel, archaeological underwater tunnel here recently too. It's like 200 miles long. It's probably full of artifacts and stuff.
Right. So this is what's going, and they call this the Kali Yuga, or the darkest time period. We literally are in such a dark time period, and we've been it's been accelerating too. So it actually has been accelerating, and this whole info war thing that's going back and forth. I mean, my God, when you're sitting there listening to the news, you don't, whether it's Fox or CNN. I mean, you see this information wars going on, where literally the truth gets so distorted. Especially the mundane truth. And so now we're talking and getting back this whole time period with my uncle. The whole time period ebbed and flowed as far as that. And so when it became hot, he got more research dollars that he actually got in and, could do something with. And then all of a sudden it would all, go away. And then eventually toward the end of his life, especially during the mid 70s, the whole ufology thing essentially died. I mean, it died. I mean, there were very few people. The popularity of it just went down. People just assume that this is, everyone was into this during the time period. Well, it ebbed and flowed. Just like like right now, it seems to be a real hot button.
Did he?
With the very.
Well, I mean, did they ever mention how that worked, how time travel worked in the Integratron?
No, I never
got that far, huh?
No, I never got that far. And a lot of this stuff was in my uncle's mind. A lot of the stuff too was in his research papers, which incidentally a lot of it came up missing. So there's a lot of work that we don't know about. But again, he was a good old boy. And he was a work in progress, but he was essentially he was the I guess there was a Michael Douglas movie, the Jewel of the Nile, and the Jewel of the Nile was this guy. It was him. So it was him. But again, everyone, if you perception wise, when you're looking at materially, you got material science, combating this. The super sensible world and this other world of which you call spirit science, right. As far as that's what that was this gigantic war and conflict. So as far as getting any kind of papers or whatever, there was a lot of opposition to a lot of this stuff, and so information was guarded.
Well, the reason why I call it spirit science is because a lot of people refer to it back in the day, as occult science, and that scares people. So I say spirit science, because I don't want to say the word that scares everybody.
Occult?
But, yeah. Does that scare you?
It's scary. It's scary. Occult. That means hidden, right?
That's it. That's all it means. It's not cult. Yeah. I think it's that cult word that scares everybody, but a cult is a whole different thing. Right. So here's an important part that I think people need to understand about George. Didn't, at some point, he started being visited by government officials, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He had and he was threatened, but on many occasions he was threatened as far as that stuff goes. But he was mainly harassed, and and I guess the psychic wars, is a bad one, and to have to endure, and that did happen. He actually had people, and he had people come and telling him, threatening him, and don't do this and don't do that, and if you do this, we'll do this, and but he kind of just kept on, and in relative, he was obscure. He was well known at the time because he was on the Lon John Neville show, and he was on these various. And also too, he was on a continual speaking engagement to every Rotary Club on the face of the planet, and every college, so he was out there doing it. But again, for the time, there were other players, that were out there, and this whole, ufology was still very, very small, and again, it was probably labeled more as in the tinfoil crowd, quirky, et cetera, et cetera. So it wasn't a popular or cool thing to do, or in everyday circles. So that was also the problem. It wasn't that popular. It wasn't. It was just through a few group and the secret societies. Actually had been working with some of this stuff, and of course, the intelligence communities were, hard pressed to find out what he knew, how he knew it, and how and why the aliens would be talking to George Van Tassel. So so there was a lot of opposition to what he was doing, on many, many levels and for many, many reasons.
That's a fact. That's true. And in the book you have, the way you start out the book, man, is incredible, because you start out like from a super third point of view. I don't want to give the book away, but it's like, you start out from, let's say you're the view of a policeman or a reporter about to head to a giant rock and see what this fuss is about, and it just turns into this crazy scene. And a lot of that stuff actually happened, didn't it?
It did. It did. It did happen.
They really threw dynamite in that thing?
Yeah. They threw smoke bombs.
Smoke bombs, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they were going to smoke him out. They're going to smoke this guy out, and they could have just waited him out. But they wanted to talk to him. But yeah, I've heard another component from another fairly credible source too, and this has been added into the whole thing. This is that he actually had stolen some dynamite. That he actually had stolen some dynamite and he had it stored down there, and that was another one of the reasons that it went out. But the other side is, I've heard some many sources that he had a shortwave radio, and he spoke in broken German and times in Germany and German, and so consequently they wanted to find out what this guy was doing out there on the middle of nowhere, which it makes sense. So yeah.
Well, all they need. All they need is a story or a narrative to come after him. That's it.
Right. Well, the other thing too is that he had fenced off a lot of the roads out there too. He did a lot of crazy things. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He claimed, there were ranchers out there that they actually were grazing stuff, but he would actually put up fences and block people from accessing, ingressing or through the whole property. So he'd put up fences, and so there was the fence war, as far as that. But shit, who in the hell knows?
You got to think, if aliens are talking to you and you're carrying on a conversation with them, channeling them or whatever, you're going to change. Your life is going to change. You're going to be considered by crazy to a lot of people, and that makes me think about some of the people today that have, and I'm not saying they're not real psychological disorders, but things like multiple personality or people that hear voices and stuff. We call them crazy, but maybe they're not so crazy. Maybe they're just tapping into something we don't know about.
Well, no, and absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing too, and I, of course, the study of all this stuff too is and my uncle pegged it. He says, hey, people, I had a voice out of the sky basically hit me, and he talks about that. He says sometimes you'll hear a voice and you'll look around, no one's there, and then he actually, in his book When Stars Look Down, he talked about this Ediphone, and if you get hit by an omni beam, that literally the watchers are looking at you and they're communicating with you through an Ediphone, and it's a very, very strong, powerful thing, and then they transfer this through an omni beam. They actually take the whole message and they'll hit you in the head with it, and they'll even call your name, and I guess that happened to him quite often, happened to me out there. So a lot of things that I have kind of rediscovered events as far as me, and I know we're going to segue probably in the next hour or whatever on
I was going to ask you
my own events, but all the things that I've lived, and this is actually past. This is not. It wasn't after they happened to me. I went to say, "Hey, what's this, Uncle George?" I did that conversation never existed with these things here. I dealt with this stuff on my own, but it was only through research and reading his material that he basically explained in detail all the various things that I've experienced, and that's what's really probably more incredible than anything, at least for me in my own journey as far as some of the stuff, and how he is on and off through the years been contacting me and, you know, giving me information. And I know it's him through this other dimension, other entity. It's his voice and it is him. And if I were taught, you know, and obviously I'm not running for president, but, you know, people would think I'm absolutely nuts. But, you know, you know,
No.
it's just yeah, I mean, no. But the thing about it is, it's not a new phenomenon. I've been nuts since I was 4 years old. And so I've just kind of grown to accept this. Now, also too, which leads me to another question as far as that. Number one, you know, everyone says, well, yeah, in fact, I had a, you know, it always comes down to who you're going to believe. In fact, I had a psychology teacher in high school, you know, as far as this. He says, his name was Dr. Baldwin. He was actually a doctor. And he says, oh yes, people, you know, people sometimes, you know, hear their name, you know, out there, and he was explaining away the phenomenon. And his explanation is that, you know, that's a, you know, just, you know, some sort of distortion, et cetera, hello, knock on wood. But you know, who are you going to believe? You going to believe the psychobabble of Dr. Baldwin, you know, which no one I had ever talked to in my whole life had actually heard their name being called out in the middle of the desert. Okay, I
have, right?
I have.
So do you think this stuff has been passed down to you from your uncle, or is it just kind of family thing?
I think so. Even though we're not blood, my Aunt Eva is my blood relative who he was married to. So he's not my blood uncle as far as that.
Okay.
But on the psychic level, there was something going on with him and me from the beginning, and even after my aunt had died, there was a lot of very weird energy going on between my uncle and his girlfriend, and pointed at me. And that is still a mystery, and it maybe explains why I'm doing certain things I'm doing now. I mean, you know, and this always comes down to it. Okay, either it's fantasy, or there is actually these, you know, we're being somewhat programmed, or for various reason to either carry perhaps a message or continue a message. And it's pure speculation on my point. The only thing I can say is that I'm doing this. I mean, I'm out there, you know, I'm out there in the public realm talking about all of these various things here, and there must be a reason for it, you know.
True
and
that, for sure. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about some of the things that have happened to Chad, and get into that. We'll probably open the phones up too if you want to call and ask any questions. Don't go anywhere, guys. I am Joe Roop. I'm here with Chad Meek on Spaced Out Saturday tonight. We're in the final hour. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back after these words.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Hello, SOR listeners. Lorian Fenton here. Let me ask you, now that disclosure's happened, what does it mean for ufology? For answers, join us at UFOCon 2018 in South San Francisco, California, March 23rd through 25th. Keynote speakers Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, and Melinda Leslie address the current disclosure agenda. Dave Scott, yes, you're Dave Scott, and Lynn Buchanan tell of amazing alien encounters. Get your tickets at caufocon.com. That's caufocon.com.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Want more information about our programming? Check out spacedoutradio.com. You can follow our host, Joe Rube, on Twitter at Lighting the Void. Call in to tonight's show at 501-777-5631. Now, entering the radio ring from Arkansas, Spaced Out Saturday host, Joe Rube.
Thank you, Bob. Welcome back to Spaced Out Saturday. I'm Joe Roop. Don't forget, after the show, stay tuned for S4 with Eric Cooper and Corey Rees. And tomorrow night, Psychic Sundays with Elizabeth Anglin. Thank you all for tuning in. Now, if you want to call in and ask Chad any questions, the call-in number is 501-777-5631. It's one line right now, so if you call and no one answers, just keep calling. Make sure to turn down your show if you're listening, so it'll cause confusion in the cranium due to the delay if you don't turn down your radio. So we're continuing our discussion with Chad Meek, the George Van Tassel story, and the Integratron. Giant Rock, the movie, is the big thing that we're trying to get going right now. And now we've talked about George's story. If anybody wants to keep looking into that further, you could simply just Google George Van Tassel, and there's a ton to look at, even his interviews that he was on. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the things that have happened to you, Chad. Some stuff has happened in your life that's pretty paranormal as well, right?
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I ran the gamut as far as, all of this stuff. And again, we were talking a little bit in the last hour about how a lot of this has been explained to me after the fact. You go from a kind of situation where I've literally, been... and that's a part of the benefit of being associated with, with Giant Rock, the Integratron, my uncle, the whole group, this whole, this whole ufology and paranormal world, is that there are answers out there, and the answers have come primarily from my uncle, is some of his written works, and I thought that was really fascinating, but that doesn't surprise me either, because I would always be out at the Rock. There was my aunt and uncle had a small restaurant, and the place was always filled with military and pilots, and this massive dry lake that's outside of that. And the restaurant's long gone, been torn down. It was kind of a little rackety shack, anyways, but there would always be people in there, and my uncle would be, talking with them. And I found out later what he was doing was counseling people who'd had primarily, sightings or interactions with, extraterrestrials, which and he was the go-to guy in the whole world as far as, if you wanted to get unravel some of this stuff, and obviously if you're a pilot, you're a pretty conventional guy. Usually you're a part of a standardized Judaic-Christian format where your life is pretty much all planned out. Then all of a sudden you have an extraterrestrial basically rock your world and change your own personal narrative. It can really screw with your brain.
Hey, I want to say something about that. I was telling you about that show, Patient 17, whatever it's called on Netflix. I think that's the name of it, where they go to the doctors because they have these implants in, right? Right. They have them study the implants and everything and see if it's of this world or not. And this guy was a regular dude, and they asked him, they said, well, what's the issue? Why do you want to know? And if you do find out that it's an extraterrestrial implant or something that's not from this world, what's your next move? And he said, well, I really want to know because I grew up a Christian. I grew up with this belief, and if they tell me that this is something that's from a different world that's implanted in me, then I don't know what I'm going to do. And he had this crazy confused look on his face, almost like he didn't want to know, but he did,
Well, it goes through too, and it goes, the War of the Worlds with, Orson Welles, goes back that whole model that, and again, along with the whole, with the darker side of essentially trying to keep people in the dark. The biggest concern is just mass hysteria. And, with this whole extraterrestrial, type thing. And that was their biggest concern if the word got out. So it makes sense that, when you get into this kind of X-File mentality, to keep it out of the, consciousness of because everyone's format is, again, go to work, pay your taxes, do what your congressman tells you to do, go to war if the government tells you to do, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what if you basically knew that everything you've been told or taught, the majority of stuff has been distorted or at best a half-truth, and would you go to war, and would you pay your taxes, and would you do this? And the answer is that's it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but their fear is that it would be the whole breakdown of society, and that goes back all the way to Churchill when they had the Foo Fighters, these mysterious craft that were touching wings with the British air fighters across the channel in World War II, and so it was a real problem, and there were a lot of sightings, and they would see a lot of craft up there that could not be explained with all the Royal Air Force pilots. So, anyways, his biggest concern, and especially with American sightings too, is Churchill's thought was that it would be the breakdown of society, and along with Franklin Roosevelt and Harry S. Truman. And you got to remember, they had a lot of strange and odd things going on, during that time period, as far as, during that whole thing. But the biggest thing is to keep a lid on it. And of course, that's why you get into this whole, Roswell thing, where you get, 5 or 6 different stories that they can't make their minds up, whether there was whether they're a craft or a weather balloon, or et cetera, et cetera. Well, this is the same thing. And this is what everyone's, worried about. But I think we're probably coming pretty close to a time period where we're going to really know, and that, what will the world look like? I don't know. I don't know, but the lies and deceit that's gone on and the intrigue during the whole thing has been really, really ugly, and it's been real. I mean, it really has. And
what I'm saying is I don't understand why we get so polar-minded, Chad, that just because you see an alien means that you have to invalidate your belief. It doesn't mean there's no God or Jesus, or not to me it doesn't. It just means that, hey, there's aliens somebody didn't tell you about. You know what I mean? I'm not, right. I just don't, the thing that bothers me is and Crow 777 Radio is a guy that's on the Fringe FM network, says it best. He says, belief is the enemy of knowing. Right?
Sure it is.
So, it's not, it taints everything so much. And you'll get people that tell you these just confounded statements. Oh, it's this or it's that. And with no proof, but just because it's their belief. Right?
Right.
And that's okay. But if something comes along and is different, or it doesn't fit in the paradigm of the book that they was programmed with when they were brought up, then they either throw it away. And what I'm saying is don't throw it away. It doesn't mean that your book is wrong. Maybe there's just something that you haven't been told. That's all.
Well, they also too, one of the great statements that I actually adhere to, and I've actually seen firsthand. Most everyone has been around any one religion. They say that religions were created to get in the way of truly religious experiences, right. and it really does. I mean, you got to remember, everything was sanctioned out of the Vatican. I mean, they determined for you who are saints. Well, we run into all kinds of saints in our lives, and you'll know them, you'll see them by their actions, et cetera, and they're not going to be declared a saint, by some arbitrary panel or group in some faraway city. And this is I guess the other message, as far as the real neat thing about the common man, is that we're all entitled to our own events and sightings, experiences. We all have them, but the things, what I guess what irritates me the most is that there's a sanctioning body, that they have to be sanctioned,
right?
And that your experience or my experience is meaningless.
Well, what about, so that's what I want to talk about this. So what was some of the first things that happened to you that shook your paradigm?
Well, the first thing I talked to was basically the voice out of the sky. That was the first thing. That opened up a channel that, and it was just, it was an innocent prayer. That's all it was. It was an innocent prayer, standing on top of my grandmother's old Airstream beat up trailer that was essentially used as a storage shack outside of my grandmother's house. I stood on top of it on a day and just asked, hey, if there is, and for some reason I had a mindfulness of what God. I said,
how old were you?
I was 4 years old.
4,
Everything happened.
okay.
4. Yeah, 4 years old. If there's a God, then call my name. And then I heard my name. Boom.
Wow.
I mean, it's like a cannon, like something literally the equivalent of a cannon being shot in my ears. And so I jump off that Airstream thing into a scrap pile and go underneath my grandmother's bed. It seemed to be a refuge, over there like a small dog. And I kind of just was freaked out. And that's kind of what started a lot of this stuff here. And then soon thereafter, I had my first abduction experience. And everything seems to be connected to that whole time period. And again, I'm talking about where my uncle talks in his book, When Stars Look Down, he talks about this Ediphone obviously, I extrapolated God speaking to me, as far as that. I didn't down the road, I finally got it that it was, there was a messenger up there saying, yeah, there is a God. Yeah.
So you didn't hear the voice. After you heard the voice, you ran off. Did you tell your parents you heard a voice?
I didn't tell anybody. A lot of these events, they said, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" Well, I couldn't explain to them that a voice had spoken and yelled at my ears out in the middle of the sky, in the middle of the desert. Just, and like my abduction experience. This is in the book too. This is some of the stuff. I mean, we get into this. One of the things they talk about the pink house and that whole event that occurred. If you ever read in the book, there was actually an event that my younger sister and brother came up missing, and I literally found them inside a refrigerator inside of a pink house down the road, and I had telepathic voices telling me exactly where they were at, and no one could figure out. And when I opened that door, they couldn't get out. They couldn't knock the door out. The latch said, "Well, why don't you get out?" Well, the latches wouldn't allow them. You couldn't break out of them from the inside, but somehow they got taken away and they were abducted, taken away, put in there, and I was told, we had a little search party going. I was told exactly, and it was a voice going in my head where they were at, and I went over, and I went over and I saved their lives. Now, in the book, and again, the book was very cathartic. The screenplay is very cathartic for me to do. And this is what happened. This is what got changed with that. My mother had accused me of putting them in there. I didn't put them in there. I was a year older than a year and a half older than my brother, and 4 years older than my younger sister at the time. I didn't put them in there. So instead of being a hero, instead of being as far as that, I was ostracized, and that's how quickly that stuff happens in the whole mind. Because they couldn't figure out how I knew that they were inside of the refrigerator inside the pink house. So it was it turned into a traumatic event. Another event that happened to me was, I talk about the jelly bean guessing contest, where I guessed the exact number that came to mind, was given to me, of the exact number of jelly beans inside of a garbage. And this happened years later, and I'm bouncing around here, but and I got one of the recreational workers almost fired because they were convinced that she had given me the numbers. And she didn't give me the numbers. It was just a number that came in my head, and I wrote it down on a piece of paper, and I submitted it, and it was the exact number. And
That's
so
crazy.
I've had a lot. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
So do you remember being abducted? Like, did you go on a ship or anything, or did you have missing time? Or
well, from after that, I was abducted. I was teleported through a window, and I was taken to a ship, and there were 4 gray entities. They're the small grays. They were basically all around me, communicating with me telepathically. So I had that experience going on. They did put instruments. They put instruments in my eye. They took measurements, et cetera, et cetera. Processed that thing to death. As far as that whole thing, I stuttered profusely for about 6 months. Couldn't keep a sentence afterwards. Ran high temperatures. I probably had some sort of device implanted. I've never ever had X-rays. Who knows? The damn things could still be inside of me. But as far as that stuff, and literally was I was a part of this. Just this whole information stuff. which part of my whole life has been one of extraordinary, psychic. On some, it's diminished over the years, but still it's there. I mean, so I had that experience as far as that. Then I had missing time periods out in the desert where I'd be gone for a few hours, be out in the middle of the desert, and I'm 6 and 7 years old. Well, it wasn't abnormal for us to be wandering out in the desert, but it was really different for me because I couldn't account for the time. Or everyone would be, my relatives, cousins would be at a party, and then I would be left, they would go somewhere else, and I'd be left alone, and no one knew that I wasn't with them. So I had these, and of course, it's in the book too, I had another experience where I was swinging and on a very cloudy day, and they were telepathically, I knew they were there, and they said, it's time to come again. And I had refused. This is the last time I'd actually had any abduction. I hung on to this. I was on a swing, and the swing went vertical up in the air, and I was really dangling by my legs. They were pulling me, and I would not let go. And I said, no, I'm not going. I'm not going. I'm not going. And they finally gave up. And that was the last time that I ever have any memory of any kind of abduction attempts as far as that. But that was actually, I think they just gave up, and through my own will, I just said, no, I'm not going. And that's when I also, too, recollect the benevolent side of there are benevolent watchers, too, that do intercede at different time periods as far as that stuff goes, too. So when people tell me that, they're all good or all bad, etc., said, no, there is just like everything in the universe is like, everything in the universe. There's good extraterrestrials, there are people, there are benevolent extraterrestrials, there are evil extraterrestrials, there are this whole litany of things, just like in our bodies, molecularly, there are good cells, there's bad cells, it all works. It's all part of the whole thing. So yeah, the answer is, yeah, I had a whole litany of continued experiences, and some of the more serendipitous things.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, like, for instance, I and this is a coincidence. Like, for instance, I wake up. We had cable TV on, and I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and my uncle's on the television. People say this is a coincidence. Okay, he's on the television, standing in front of the Integratron on Discovery Sunday, talking about the Integratron. Okay, and I'm waking up. I'm thinking I'm dreaming. I'm listening to my Uncle George as far as on the television. Well, it was a real television story. Well, then the next day, a guy named Clyde Lewis, which I think a lot of people know who he is. He's a pretty big name.
Ground Zero.
He calls me up. He calls me up out of the blue, and was trying to sell me some ad space. I don't even know how he got my number for his radio show.
Really?
And called me out of the blue, and I go, and I'm talking to him. He goes, "Yeah, we have a really good deal on," and he was selling me something. I don't know what the hell it was. Maybe it was ad space or something.
How long ago was this?
1997.
So this was before he really blew up. So that was back in his
Midvale, Utah.
Right.
Yeah, before he blew up. And so he calls me up, okay, and I'm talking to him on the phone, and I've said this. This is part of the Twilight Zone, side of this whole thing. Okay, my uncle came to me in a dream. Then Clyde Lewis next day calls me up out of the blue, tries to sell me something. Whatever it is. I mean, and I looked down, and there was a small toy spaceship in my hand while I'm talking to Clyde Lewis. It was the most freakiest thing I've ever seen, because there were no little kids. I had no little kids there, and it was a toy space. I never seen the damn thing, and I finally tell him, I said, dude, I said, you got a voice for radio, and he goes, well, I do have a show. It's called Ground Zero, and I go, really? And I go, man, you're going to do really well with this. And so I'm telling him, I said, no, man. I said, no. I go, no, really, you are going to do. I mean, So
you told him? Did you tell him this as like a premonition, or did you
like
just
a premonition.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Because he is doing really well in radio.
No, he is too, man. I mean, it's crazy. But then here's the other weird part about it. I said, okay, yeah, Clyde. I said, and he goes, hey, and let's keep in touch. I said, yeah. And so I hung up the phone, and I could not find that damn little spaceship. Yeah. And I tore my house apart looking for it. It was a perfect spaceship. It was a perfect toy spaceship that was it looked real as far as that whole thing goes, but it was a little toy, and it was and as soon as I hung up the phone, that left. Now this is some of the stuff that I've been dealing with. Now then the following is when I had that big sighting with the rainbow ship that literally came through all of Utah, came from one end of Utah to the other.
Hold on a second. Hold the phone here. You never told me about a rainbow ship, Chad.
Yeah, there's a rainbow ship. Okay, that was okay. And this is all the coincidence and all in the same time period. Well, I have a dream, and my uncle tells me to go up in the mountains, okay, and go wait for this spaceship, this rainbow spaceship. And I go, and so I woke up. It was vivid, virtual dreaming. So I get on my hiking boots. I go on the top. We lived fairly close to the mountains at the time. So I go to the top and don't see nothing. Then I come walking down. And I said, oh, well, I guess it was a bogus dream. Well, I come down, and all of a sudden there's this huge ship.
How old were you at this time?
Oh God, what was I? 97. I'm probably about, what am I now? About 25 years ago.
Okay.
So I was, yeah. So anyways, I'm walking down, and I get to the base, and I see this huge rainbow ship, and it's over, and it's just slowly moving, no noise, no nothing, and I'm up. I'm just stunned by the magnitude, the beauty of this completely rainbow colored ship that was, perfectly proportioned, moseying on down, going up towards Idaho.
Was it a disc? Or?
No, it was what's the other stuff?
Triangular?
Not a disc. No, it wasn't triangle. It was round. It was an oblong. It was what's that dimension? It was just like an extended circle, mainly at the top and the front, and it was oblong as far as that. But
and it was rainbow colored.
Yeah, and it's all rainbow colored. I'm freaking out at this thing. I was going, whoa, okay. And so then I go and I listened to the news that night. I remember his name too. And I have this eidetic memory on certain of these facts that happened. The guy's name is Dick Norris, and he was the CBS affiliate. And he's telling everybody on this, oh yes, the switchboard has been inundated with calls about this rainbow ship that came out. He says thousands have called, and we've talked to NASA, and NASA said yes, there is a condition where it actually appears where you have a rainbow ship go. Well, rainbows don't work that way. They go from the ground on one, and they go to the other ground. They don't go in a complete, unified, perfect oblong. And they don't travel from one side of the state to the other. Okay, so the whole rainbow, the whole actual, we were all watching rainbows. So and again, all these occurrences basically were happening within this whole timeline of, within days of each other, as far as that. And so there is a phenomenon that goes on with me, at various times in my life, and it seems to be always when I don't know. I guess when I'm a little bit, I always get these reaffirmations about what I am seeing and what I'm looking at. As far as this has been my own story as far as from age 4, and the last sighting I had was about 2 years ago. So it's not like it's not like okay. It's not like they don't happen regularly, but they happen erratically. They'll go 4 or 5 years. I'll have them boom, boom, boom. Then for another 3 or 4 years, I won't have any. But they seem to happen to me on a regular basis, and again, I have no answer why.
When you say rainbow ship, though, was it like multicolored, like if you were looking at oil and water or something, or is it, striped like a rainbow?
Striped like a rainbow. Yeah, striped like rainbow.
Damn.
Incidentally, in my uncle's book, too, and this is the whole thing, is I just by chance had a copy that was sitting out, and I opened up the pages, and he talks about the rainbow people and the rainbow ships. and when I talk, and that was one of the missing parts of the story is, after I saw it, I opened up to the direct page, and he talks about in his when stars look down, he talk about the rainbow people and the rainbow ships, and that there's a whole group of visitors to this planet, and explained exactly what that ship was about. So I've had these this weird interaction between from a very early age with my uncle and his material, and this whole phenomenon, as far as this, and I've just kind of, I don't know, at times I feel like I've kind of been drugged to the party, simply because just the sheer magnitude and the various events. But these are just all of these. I'm kind of jumping around here as far as with the different time periods, as far as sightings and what have you. I mean, it's endless. I mean, it's such a regular occurrence. I mean, especially during and I sound a little bit contradictory, but different time periods, it happens regularly. I mean, as far as these kind of events that happen in what I did is I condensed them all, and in a character named Chase that had a early UFO experience, and that's how that got in the book. Is because, and the other epiphany was, the story really didn't go very far when I was writing it without the continuity of Chase or my own experiences, with this. Now, also too, before I get too distracted of what I was going to think about. What's happened is other people have come to me and shared their experiences since I've been out, so to speak, about that. And as recently as 2003, there was an abduction, and an abduction, and there were 5 witnesses out in the desert. One of which is a guy named Kevin Smith that actually I still work with. He's
when did
helped
this
me
happen again?
2003.
Okay.
Out at the Rock, yeah, and a girl literally she ran, and I actually talked to her at length about her event, and Kevin was a direct witness. There were witnesses to her actual abductions, and then when she was brought back down, she was messed. Now I tried to get her to get in front of the camera, and she was all scheduled, but after she had the event, she fell apart emotionally. As far as and this is what happens to a lot of people who've been abducted, is they fall apart psychologically because they can't handle it. Anyway, she apparently ran into a lot of alcohol and drug problems with that whole thing.
After the abduction happened?
After the abduction, and she became a real mess.
Can you share any of her story, or does she want to keep it all? I mean, you never said her name, right?
Yeah, she doesn't want to come out, and she actually had information as far as on a design of something, and she was talking, and after she came down, all the witnesses said that she was talking in a complete different language. And after she did it, she ran toward the ship. They actually took her up. In fact, all 6 of them were out there at the Rock. They saw the ship come down, and the one girl ran up to it, and they took her up. And she was gone. They actually saw the ship go and disappear, and then very quickly it came back, and she came back down, and she was speaking in a completely different language, and she was trying to tell them all kinds of. Anyway, so she became a mess afterwards, and this is 2003. Now these are all entertainment people working in the industry in Hollywood that went out to Giant Rock as a kind of a vacation, okay, and this and Kevin Smith contacted me after all this stuff. So, anyways, I did talk to her, and I wanted to get her. At the time, I'd got a couple of videos of a couple of interviews of people that had been abducted or had miraculous, cures. It's on my YouTube channel. I got two of the people, but she was being one of my third guests. I really wanted it, so I talked to her for 5 or 6 hours. And she said she was so relieved. She was so glad I was out there. Then I'm so glad that somebody else, had confirmed what she had experienced. I heard the whole litany of compliments. And then she stopped talking to me, and I found out later that she was actually having problems again.
Probably some type of post-traumatic deal.
Right,
so she got taken.
Right.
The thing zipped away and came back in, I guess, a few moments.
Yeah.
Which, for all we know, they could have, time is distant, so there's really no telling where the hell they went.
Right.
And she comes back speaking a different language.
Yeah, speaking Greek and talking about technology in broken language, speaking different languages, talking about technology and just being completely overwhelmed. And all these people, and incidentally, I was at, too, it's always what you do, for instance, what you do with your life and time. So
wasn't Kevin Smith that does Clerks,
no,
like the director, was it?
No, different one. I've actually run into 3 Kevin Smiths, but this is not the director. But what they all did was they all quit their jobs after that event. They all quit their jobs and walked across the United States and went door to door, was asking people what they could do to help them. So they literally walked across the United States. They got a lot of it on film too. And so that's what they did after they had their sighting. That's what they did. Is that they couldn't go back to Hollywood and deal with all the crap, of being, in the cast and crew of various, television and movie production. They just couldn't handle it. So that's what they did. They all went, and then so these are certain events and things that and the list goes on as far as what I've been exposed to, and what I also appreciate about their story was it's contemporary. We're talking about 2003. We're not talking about 1960, 62 or 1963 or 1964. When we're talking about an event that happened even after my uncle had died, and there were so many different events that had happened. And again, it ebbed and flowed out there. Different times you had Uri Geller, the spoon bender. He was a regular out there, out at the Rock. And then you had a lot of celebrities come out there. So out at the Rock, you had all these different people, and that's part of the real that and some of the just some of the events that occurred with my uncle and the the various societies, various intelligent communities and things like that, all the cat and mouse stuff. And that's why the culmination of all of this stuff, including mine, which gives an additional continuity. There's something extraordinary about Giant Rock, and so I happen to, and to a lot of other people, it's like a touchstone, or it's a very, very memorable thing that of course it's just set up.
If this place is it set on certain ley lines or anything as far as that goes?
That's what they claim. Captain Bruce Cathy, Harmonics 666, he wrote a bunch of books, and he actually makes a case for this digital universe thought process, that we're like kind of this computer simulation, type thing, argument. I don't know if you've been hearing that or not, but a lot of the people in the advanced science, they're really talking about our very existence being a computer civilization, as far as that, and that everything's lined up on grids, which, it's nothing new as far as these very powerful grids that, that create these, this whole mosaic of stories and events, et cetera, et cetera. Well, he claimed that both the Integratron and Giant Rock are on this these lines, these interdimensional lines, and that they're and supposedly they move too. That was his also contention. So that where you could create these like vortexes, and so. So apparently there's something to that.
Can anybody go out there? I mean, to the Integratron, like say, if I wanted to take a friend out there and there was nobody around, is it like guarded? Can we just go out there?
No, you can go buy it. You can't go inside it without paying the fee, which is, that's I'm at odds with the owner.
What do you mean paying a fee? You got to pay a fee to go inside the thing?
Yeah. They charge people money to rent the space out, and that's how they get their money, and they make pretty good money. My biggest problem with the whole thing is, first of all, they don't like me because I don't know, they feel like I'm a competitor or something with their thing. But
you're trying to steal their money,
right? I'm trying to get their money, but they also don't like it because that whole thing was done with my family's labor and donations from Howard Hughes and others. A lot of other people put a lot of money in that whole thing. That was all part of research. And this intention was for people to go to, that thing was supposed to be free and open to the public, that everyone could go and, you know, get whatever they could get out of there just by visiting it. And then, you know, and it was all supposed to be set up on donation. Well, it, you know, the thing got sold 3 or 4 different times, and these people who ended up with it, it's been somewhat of a commercial enterprise for them. And I've kind of, I'm, you know, it's like, oh God, I mean, I think we're all missing the point here for a little bit of, you know, a few pieces of silver. I think we're selling the whole idea and concept out, and God knows where this thing could have gone or where it could go if it wasn't, you know, essentially monetized. It comes down to the money again, but it never was designed to do that. It was actually, it's kind of like a, it was designed to really be kind of a, you know, like almost like an open network to get people together to, create, ideas for peace and ideas to lessen the common man's burden, et cetera, et cetera. It's supposed to be like a gathering point, but then that changed after my uncle had died, and it went to different hands. But yeah, in answer, yeah, Bruce, Captain Bruce Cathy, he said that, yeah, that it's definitely on. There's a mathematical configuration. I've got his book. Actually, I got the original book. I got the pre-publication book of Harmonics 666 or whatever the damn thing is, and you can see where he pasted in all the various things he had typewritten. It's kind of a combination of that. A lot of the back in the day before they had computers, he actually had typed in the little things and pasted them into the various slots. So I have that original copy of this guy. But he also said that his belief was that that there's a grid that the government knows about that make only certain areas possible to split atoms at 2, and it has to be on the right. The ley lines have to be right. They have to be on the right grid, otherwise they won't work. They won't separate. Anyways, go ahead.
That's crazy. I'm not saying it's crazy, like not real. It's just, that's intense.
Just crazy. It's crazy, and also too during the time period too. Even this stuff here, and that's part of the benefit I've had is him and Gabriel Green and a whole host of other people I got to talk to and be around, and so I could, one of the things too when you're reading this stuff. And mine's science, mine's science faction. But even when you're listening to stuff, it's like, okay, I continually am cross-referencing, like, Gabriel Green, Captain Bruce Cathy, et cetera, this person, and I'm cross-referencing all this stuff, and people are always talking about the same thing, only with their versions. So I put together this, idea. So I have the basis as far as within my mind, just by my experience and by me talking to these people, as far as what they were, and God help me if they have a book or some of their stuff I can reference, and it clicks in my brain, is, oh God, yeah, that's what they were talking about. So it's like, at the time,
sure.
When you're when you're listening to people who say, okay, oh yeah, what's he talking about? Like and so I've had the benefit of with my I guess eidetic memory and scattered brain as far as this. I put all this stuff together, and then for like thank God my uncle had several books I could open up. And say, oh yeah, that's what he's talking about. That's what he's telling me in person. And then
so you don't get any more communications with. I mean, have these beings just stopped communicating with you and your family, or you just don't hear about it anymore?
I just don't. I mean, I haven't had this direct communication. Now, if I were to focus, and if I were to, and that might be a possibility too, if I were to spend a lot of time out there, and perhaps even get a trailer and what have you, and get into a deep meditative state. Right. I could probably draw a lot of the stuff through, but it just has not been conducive to that. Here, my idea, grand scheme of things, as far as is to get the story out with a lot of people and hopefully create some sort of group. And I have a loose group right now, as far as with some of the stuff, but then get something done, really. And of course, that was what we were going to do with some of the proceeds of the money of the film, is a way to get, is to get enough funds and get people together. Because even if you have an event, it as well as I do. Even if you have an event, you'd have to have some resources to facilitate, this stuff in this day and age, to have an event out there, even porta potties.
So what could no doubt about that. So what could an average Joe do? If they say, well, this isn't interesting, I'm going to go check out George Van Tassel's story, and they look into it. They get your book, and they really find that this is, like I did, one of the biggest stories that's been hidden in ufology. It's really not been told good enough, if you ask me. But they figured that out for themselves. What should they do next to help support the movement, you think?
Well, here's the dilemma that we're at. And I don't have an answer, and I really wish I could say, listen. First of all, everyone is 99.9% of us are scratching away, trying to get money for our, to pay our light bills. And just the survivability. Let's call a spade a spade. And the other half are paying. Anyone have any extra money, they're usually paying high interest rates on everything they own. So there is very little disposable income as far as in the demographics, as far as on that. So what can somebody do?
Besides, I was thinking maybe like raise a bigger stink about it at first, in order for the money to come in, you got to raise the demand, I would think.
Right. Well, I thought about it too, and I started this. I actually I thought, well, I can raise consciousness by about this by doing a run across the United States and gathering up forces. And that you talk about, that was like a lead balloon. I created a GoFundMe account, and I got $25 from one woman, and I got my son anonymously donated $25 because
wow.
he was embarrassed that there was only $25 in there. but yeah, it went over like a lead balloon. As far as that whole thing, as far as to kind of get support. So again, it's always been the book. The book originally it sold okay, and I made a little bit of money off that, but not enough to really do anything. But I thought with combined media, and it always came back down to feature film as far as that, where the real money is, as far as that stuff goes. So what could we do? Well, one of the things I thought we could do is literally create communities, of people, that are interested in this and would like to, live within a community out either near Joshua Tree or near that, and do some really serious development. Well, lo and behold, a guy, again, this Tom DeLonge guy, he has Academy to the Stars or something like that. Anyways, so he was able to raise $2 million. He got the CIA boys on it, and that's what they kind of want to do. But Jesus Christ, Joe, I don't want the CIA involved in my. They're part of the problem. These are the same guys that basically withheld information. So my point is that I'm looking for kind of, I think one thing that could be done is a group of purists who could spend time together. But you're only going to be able to do that is by, having enough resources where people could survive while we do maybe some channeling exercises. Or whether we can do some research and development as far as this. And there is a lot of power between people who are, who can focus in on the same idea of connecting with higher benevolent entities.
Why can't they help get it done? That's another thing I was going to ask. Why can't they?
It's provisional. It's like this. It's like, it's push-pull. And that's the biggest thing with my uncle as far as that. He did work. He did on the physical side on his research. He did work. He got some information, and and he pursued it and got a little further. It's the same thing with, if somebody were to hand us the jewel, which I think I think in a sense they already have, but you've got to be able to figure it out to like, for instance, too. If we need water in the desert, or we're going to die, well, I guarantee you we'll figure out, water. Now, there's something to that whole magic of being able to figure it out for ourselves. And to be honest with you, and I have to take, I haven't figured out how to get that happy medium in order to, or I guess the compromise to get Giant Rock the movie done, or whatever. I mean, and it could be a formula like Bill Gates essentially gave the disk operating system to IBM.
Well,
that was his.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be totally honest with you about this. And please don't get mad at me. But this has crossed my mind, Chad. I was thinking, Chad's got the copyrights to this stuff. I wonder if a screenwriter or a producer's actually looked at it and then looked into the legalities of it and saw Chad owns it and was like, damn, I can't touch it, and just left it alone.
That's what.
I wonder how many times that's happened.
I think that's happened a lot. I think actually that's a big consideration too, because they want to come in, they want to control. First of all, they want to control all the money on the whole thing, and so it's a psychopathic cluster. Thing.
I don't
it
have
really
a censor
is.
button. I had my finger on it though.
I know. I was going to say it, but
it's a little late.
Right. Well, I didn't say it.
I know, but the button runs a little late. I got to fix it.
So yeah, no, it is. And the other thing too is, everyone also too. Everyone thinks they know what. They all think they're experts, and if you ever looked at any movie director, and in fact, what's his name? The director of creator of Goodfellas, Scorsese. He just came out with the biggest financial bomb, but right up before that, he had the Wolf of Wall Street, and that worked out really well. But all these guys, they hit and miss, as far as this thing. But their ability, because they've been in the business, and they have access to the capital and the whole structure, then they get carte blanche as far as this. Well, now you got me and Giant Rock. It's a hell of a stretch, to basically to take this story idea and to not go to somebody like Marty Scorsese and say, here, take it, and I'll give me $50,000. Well, I can't do that. I just can't do it on several ways. Number one, I'll hold out till for the best offer as far as to get this thing. And I mean,
have you had any offers? Has anybody came to you about it?
I've had a few. But then they just drift away. I've had them had a couple really close ones, but it just didn't work out. As far as it, or the money wasn't there, or I've had production companies come to me, here, let's sign a deal, and then they can't. They just admit they can't get the money. So
That's
I've had that.
To me. Some of these movies are such trash. I mean, I've watched. Not everything is great out there, and I've watched some movies. I'm like that they dump tons of money into that are practically, in all sense of the word, useless.
Useless.
And millions of dollars were dumped into them.
Yeah, right. I know. I know that. So again, it could be timing, could be my own timing, could be the timing of the movement. There's all these different things that are out there as far as reasons as far as why. But I do agree with you that there seems to be a groundswell, and I don't know how many ideas, movie ideas, are out there that are based on actual events. True, actual events.
Talking about like sci-fi movies that they're not saying that are actual events.
Right. So how many? I mean,
there's a ton.
So, anyways, but when you get into the more truer stuff like the Fire in the Sky, as far as that, there are very few. There's actually very few things that come out. There's a couple of movies that are out there in there. One is about the guy from Venus. Who visits and met with Eisenhower and actually was in the Pentagon. Valiant Thor. I don't know if they've been on your show.
No.
Valiant Thor was this entity that was that could time dimensionally came here from Venus and showed up at the White House, and it's an interesting story. That thing has never seen the light of day either, and that's also based on some fairly decent research as far as it actually happened. Travis Walton, the whole Fire in the Sky thing, that got produced, but and that made money, and actually most of these things have made a lot of money. It's just again, there's it's like making sausage, it's making, and a lot of it's luck too, running the right person with the right idea, with the right, mindset, who wants to get something done, it's et cetera, et cetera. But then, it gets complicated. I've been scratching my head. I mean, I've been thinking, okay, well, what's the deal? What's the offer? Let's get something done here, and it just hasn't happened, flat out. But it should, and I think it will, I believe it will. But along the way, it's allowed me to share the story on the. It's been a great platform to share the giant rock story and out on the radio waves, although it's been limited. And when it's time, it's gonna bust out, and do something, So
I'll be your agent, man. Let's get this thing done.
Please be my agent. God,
all you got to do is just put the Spaced Out Radio crew. I'm sure everybody wants to be in the movie.
I'll build you a mansion. I'll build you a big ass mansion, Joe.
I just want to be an extra. I don't need a mansion.
I'll buy you a Cadillac.
Yeah.
I'll buy you a Cadillac.
Yeah, I don't really need a mansion. All I want is to be free.
I'll buy you a spaceship. I'll you know what? I'll put you in good hands as far as on a used spaceship to get you anywhere you want to go.
A Rubicon and an Airstream is all I need, and enough money to set me for the rest of my life with an internet connection. I'd be happy.
Well, here's the thing about this thing here too. Okay, I thought, listen, if this thing gets done, it's done right. I believe it's $1 billion franchise. It's every bit as good as the Hunger Games, and I've tracked them. As far as that blew up to, Lionsgate Entertainment literally was the orphan of that whole thing. Then they stumbled on this damn Hunger Games thing. And boom, boom, boom. I mean, hell, I think they did something $5 or $6 billion out of that out of thing with a bunch of kids killing each other for food, and in this dystopian world. As far as that was their whole deal. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe we could do three or four giant rocks, do a whole thing as far as that. Maybe and then I look at the branding alone. I mean, the branding application, and it's not just because I'm out there, I'm out there involved in it. I'm thinking, God damn, giant rock. I mean, what more do you want? I mean, hell, you could sell a bunch of products along with that, and
right, it could be a whole franchise type thing.
I know.
Perrier in the chat room says that she's got a SAG card, wanting to know if you're rich and single. There might be there's an option there for you.
Hey, you know what? Tell her, God bless her. But tell her I guess
taken.
Fortunately, I'm married and I'm married and old. Anyway, so yeah.
And you got a couple of dogs to go with.
And I got some huge dogs too, and anyways, but yeah, tell her God bless her.
Oh no, it's cool, man. I'm glad you came out and talked to us about it. I'm never gonna give up on this thing with you. That's why, as far as the Fringe FM, that's my thing. And I put the giant rock poster up there, and I'll always keep it up there because I believe in it.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, well, it's blood, sweat, and tears, and I mean the Fringe. I mean, my God, you paid the price, and I've had to pay a price as far as for giant rock. But I'm not to be philosophical about it. I mean, I'll just kind of keep on, and hopefully the right person will get this or get a hold of the book or whatever, and just say, hey, listen, let's make a movie and let's make a bunch of money. I mean, I'm not adverse to money. I mean, even though I'm really not. I used to be really wealthy. Actually, you know what? Your friend on the thing, she should have caught me about, I don't know, about
back
10
when you
years
were
ago.
oil digging, huh?
back when I was riding around first class all over the place. My God, I mean, I tell you what, I threw away more money than people earn in a lifetime, as far as that stuff goes. But yeah, that's another story. But bottom line is that this thing, there's an economic incentive for people involved, but more importantly, there's this really beautiful narrative as far as that, and we could at least give some qualitative programming to people that are starved, both spiritually and both, metaphysically. Right. This gives them something, to think about. I mean, that's it. God, that's the, and that's
tell
really
them how to find you. Tell the audience how they can find you on the web.
Well, right now I'm in Pismo Beach. You want to go by the Pismo?
No. I mean on the internet, dude. We got to wrap her up.
All right. No. Yeah. Just contact me, Chad at giantrockthemovie.com.
And check the website out and Facebook and all that too.
Yeah, and then Facebook me. Hey, like me. I want to be liked.
We all want to be liked.
become my Facebook friend. Chad C. Meek at Facebook, and of course we have the Giant Rock the Movie Facebook, and we're on Twitter and all the other stuff here. But if you want to get a hold of me, just email me and I'll get right back to you. Chad at giantrockthemovie.com. I'm also too, if you want to see a little bit of the trailers, you can go on my YouTube, Chad C. Meek, or Giant Rock the Movie YouTube, or you can go to our website, which is www.giantrockthemovie.com. You can see a few things there. But the best way to get in contact with me is just email me, Chad at giantrockthemovie.com.
Yeah, and get the book, too. Thanks, Chad, for coming out. It's been awesome talking to you, brother. Hang out for just a second.
I will. Thanks.
All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. That was Chad Meek and the Giant Rock story, the George Van Tassel story. Go check that out. I'll be on Lighting the Void next week. Tuesday, we're going to have Chance Gardner from Magical Egypt, and then I'll be back next weekend with Lori and Fenton. Thanks for coming out, guys. This was fun.
Faces to the ground. To the band, our steps are marching.